the latest on what's been happening with various different companies and such cutting off the government and the people, more importantly, of Russia, punishing the 140 million innocent people that live there for simply being in a political jurisdiction that some people don't like anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Most of these restrictions seem to be impacting the people rather than the government, so to speak, of Russia.
Correct. So apparently the quick news that I told you about just before we started the show, a internet provider named Lumen. I don't know if they were purported to be like on the level of Cogent, but I don't know if that's true or not. I've not really gotten all the details on that. But Cogent, which is a backbone provider, we discussed this a week ago, has cut off Russia. And now apparently this other one, Lumen, is also closing their service in Russia as well. There's more about this on the way here tonight. But also something that happened yesterday that we got into on the show quite a bit was the NHexit, the constitutional amendment that had been proposed here in New Hampshire got its hearing, this historic hearing in the State House in front of the full state legislature here, which is 400 people. Now, not all 400 are always there, so in this case there was like 360 or so that were in attendance. And it got the full hearing, and it got shot down 323 to 13 was the final vote in that particular case. We were actually playing some of the audio from the State House floor yesterday on the show, and I do have more of that audio here tonight. That video has gone online over at the Free Keene Odyssey channel, so you can go to video.freekeene.com. It's the latest video there on Odyssey, so if you want to check out what happened, you want to see the footage for yourself, it's there. We played about half of it last night. We played the couple of the opening, I don't know if you want to call them statements or whatever they were, but there are a couple more that I thought might be interesting to hear from here tonight, and then we'll also get into some bank fraud that you want to talk about, Chris, so that's coming up. The number is 603-283-6160 if you want to join us here. We go to the floor of the State House yesterday for what's called CACR 32. That's what they call a proposed constitutional amendment here in New Hampshire. So it has to get 60% of the State House and 60% of the State Senate in order for it to go onto the ballot. It did not even come close. It got about not even 4%, about 3.8% of the total number of people that were there in the chamber yesterday. And by the way, the hand-wringing and the reeing and the freaking out on social media has been pretty exquisite after this. So many of the Democrats have been just calling for the heads of the 13 heroes who voted for this piece of legislation.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of funny. They've been freaking out just in general about, Free Staters, and
oh yeah, big time.
It's kind of interesting because in some respects they're kind of right, and it's in that we don't obviously have control over the State House. I think this
no, not even close.
This particular amendment shows that, but they're freaking out as if we do, and they seem to be saying we do. And it's just, I think this just demonstrates that we don't. But what this does demonstrate is something that is it demonstrates that effectively we are gaining ground. A couple years ago, we never would have been able to get one rep, let alone 13 reps, to get on board with this kind of thing.
That's true.
So it's massive. And our numbers are increasing in New Hampshire, and our representatives, we have more representatives than we've ever had before.
Yeah, there was one of them who was saying, I don't remember which one. I've literally got at least a dozen, maybe 20 different entries from Twitter of these people just flipping out about the Free Staters. Anyway, one of them was making sound like, oh, well, they're no big deal. They're nothing. They're nothing. And I said, well, if we were nothing, why are you spending time on us? Why are you spending time trashing the Free State Project? Because we are something, and the Free Staters here are making a difference.
I mean, what do they keep saying? First they ignore you, and then they
they laugh at you.
They laugh at you, and then they fight you. And then they lose.
Nobody just stepped in, but now your mic's on. I apologize.
I'm the late nobody.
Here you are. Better have you here late than never. What were you saying?
I was saying first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win.
Correct. Correct. And
quote.
we are in the firmly in the fighting phase here. They're not ignoring us.
Very early days still, but yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So I've got more of this footage here. Brody DeShays is the tool, the young guy that they put out in front here to represent the state, to represent the union, to pimp to intimidate or to attempt to threaten, in some cases, the state representatives into doing his bidding and the union's bidding, which is to say not allow the people of New Hampshire to vote on this question. That's ultimately what these reps did, was they denied the people the right to vote.
I would think that I'm pretty sure, and I'm firmly in the let's get divorced camp, but I'm pretty sure that the vote would not, that we would not get a majority on our side, even if the vote were to occur. So I've got to wonder, what are they afraid of? Are they just afraid of finding out what that number is?
Yes, I suspect that they are, because
because I also think that number is much higher than people think.
I think the reason, I think part of the reason that they're scared is because they actually realize that there's a lot more support for this than, they want to admit, basically.
Either that or they're afraid that there's more support than they want to admit. We don't really know. The most recent study that was done looked
They do a lot of polling, though, so I would guess that they have at least a clue.
Well, that's what I was going to say. There was a study that was done, I think it was 2021 or 2020, fairly recent, where they looked at, the question was essentially, if your state were to secede and join a union of nearby states, would you support that? So it wasn't pure secession. It was secession with a new union. But so like New England would have its own union, and then, the West would have its own union, or the Southeast, that kind of thing.
See, that would be problematical for me, because I would say that the Northeast, with the exception of New Hampshire, is probably worse politically than the United States as a whole.
No, I get you. I don't like that plan, but it's the best study that I've seen in recent years, because they did ask people a question about secession, and a significant number of them were in favor of it. I can pull up the numbers here, but it was roughly a third of New Englanders said yes.
It's what's interesting is the representatives don't match up with the polling data of the masses, which means that they're not doing a very good job representing us.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, all these polls, no matter how you ask the question, it's always more than 4%, right? So you would think that we'd have let's say it was a third, right? A third are for independence.
Oh, I see what you mean. The reps
you would think that a third of the reps would be for independence, but clearly, we only had 4%, which suggests that
we don't know what
they're not representing us very well.
Well, we know what percentage voted for it, but we don't know what percentage thought it was a bad idea and what percentage were just cowardly.
I'm going to presume that most of the Free Staters were cowardly on this. There's supposedly about 40 supposedly 40 Free Staters in the State House. I don't know who they all are, but that's what I've heard.
40?
And that's what I've heard. That's what Jeremy Kaufman...
Did we go... I thought we went from 20 to 30.
According to Jeremy Kaufman, who's the executive director of the Free State Project
40?
right now, he's saying more than 40.
It depends on how you define Free Stater, too. Is he saying movers or people who are associated with the movement?
Not sure.
Those are very different numbers.
I was going to say, the FSP, itself said it went from 20 to 30 between the last election cycle and this one. That's why I'm just curious where the 40 came from.
You'll have to ask him.
Maybe he means Friends of the Free State.
He used the term Free Stater. I don't know. Whatever that means, it generally means somebody who cares about liberty. The number is 603-283-6160, but most of them didn't vote for this particular amendment.
Right.
More coming up. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
After a devastating war, the alien visitors were driven back, and their willing human collaborators were left behind to face the music. When Emma Jean Anderson's ex-lover brings her from prison, Nathan Foster and his 14-year-old nephew Ben are tasked with bringing the pair to justice. An easy enough job until they discover something is inside Emma Jean, and the fate of the planet hangs in the balance. The Family Business by Mike Coopery from BaneBooks.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
Are you tired of governments around the world killing innocent people? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin is money that cannot be inflated or controlled by any state. By continuing to use their money, you're perpetuating the killing. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available to you now. Learn it, use it, spread it.
Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. It's Bitcoin.com.
Free Talk Live.
Group of lefties who I talked to about secession, and they were of that attitude of, no, damn it, we must take back Washington, D.C. for the liberals. And, like this constant struggle over power is what they're into. They're not into freedom. They're not into, independence or being able to decide for themselves.
They want to shove whatever their version of tyranny is down the other person's throat. Oh, yeah? You don't like Bush? Well, take a little Obama then.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah? You don't like Obama? How about some Donald Trump? We'll build you a wall. And the fact is that politics, it is a threat.
Yeah.
If you don't think that Trump is a threat against your neighbor, how did you feel about Obama? Did you find him threatening? Because I can tell you gun sales skyrocketed under that guy. Can we please stop threatening our neighbors?
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, and the phones are open. If you want to join the show, you can at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. By the way, I want to say thank you to Steve Lemansky, who is a Free Talk Live supporter, via our AMPS program over at amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. You can sign up there. It's our Patreon, and it allows you to support what we do here on Free Talk Live. Get some cool benefits for doing that as well. So Steve signed up as a gold, which means he's doing at least $10 a month. Thank you, Steve, for the assistance there, and we appreciate it. Over at amps.freetalklive.com, you can join up there. That's amps.freetalklive.com. As we continue here, we're going to go to your phone calls and thoughts, and then I'll play some of the audio from the House floor yesterday at this historic hearing that, I don't know,
historic and hysteric.
Has this ever happened before, where there was actually a constitutional amendment put forth to try to peacefully allow the people to peacefully secede from the United States. Did that happen during the southern states?
I think it's the wrong first step, personally.
Oh yeah, what should it be?
I think the first step should be for our state to pass a constitutional amendment saying that if any state should secede from the Union, we will do everything in our power to prevent the federal government from going to war with that state, including refusing to send our National Guard to fight our former countrymen. And I think we should push that amendment in every state where it has even a chance of passing. Maybe even where it doesn't have a chance of passing, but get as many states as possible on that. We won't go to war to keep other states in the Union.
One of the problems I think with that is it's a complicated message. It's hard to, one of the things I liked about this constitutional amendment was it was short and simple, and there was nothing to get confused about. That
it's 12
is confusing.
Words. We won't go to war to keep other states in the Union.
I still think it's a more confusing message than independence.
Well, the good news is there's already a bill that somebody put forward this session in the New Hampshire State House that, and I don't know if it's passed or not. I don't recall the status of it, but the proposed legislation would prohibit the National Guard from being able to be called up by the federal government unless there's a declaration of war. Ooh. Now, I'm not sure if that is written as only to foreign usage or if it's just in general there needs to be a declaration of war. I suspect it's foreign use, but...
Yeah, I mean, if it's general, that would create some interesting constitutional questions because the federal Constitution allows calling out, it doesn't say the militia. I don't know exactly what it says, but it says something along, it lists the purposes under which the president can call up the armed forces, and one of those I think is civil unrest. So it would be very interesting. I mean, I would still support it. I don't think the military should be used for that purpose.
Indeed.
You know what might be an interesting change? If something's not independence, but a change to our Constitution that basically would it wouldn't declare independence, but it simply would basically change the status of our Constitution to clarify that it supersedes sort of, I guess, the U.S. Constitution. Because I mean,
to make that clear to people.
Yeah, I mean, obviously right now it's understood that the U.S. Constitution, supersedes.
But it's not supposed to.
Yeah, right.
The U.S. Constitution came after the states. So,
right,
yeah, I see what you're saying. It's not a bad idea. Let's bring Ridley on here. Dave Ridley from New Hampshire. You're on Free Talk Live.
Hi, gentlemen.
Hey.
I have some thoughts regarding how a ceasefire could be implemented unilaterally in Ukraine.
Okay. Yeah, I honestly don't know what has been going on. They've been so busy with NH exit stuff. What's the latest over there?
I'm trying to do both. But the Ukrainians are doing well in many ways, compared to what was expected. So it's kind of a repeat of the Finnish War of 1939, where the Russians go in, they think they're going to have a cakewalk, and the Finns just eviscerated the Russians in 1939, and that's kind of what the Ukrainians are doing. And it gives them the opportunity. The Ukrainians could act unilaterally at this point from this kind of a position of strength that they have in many ways. So and any side in this war could act unilaterally. For example, Ukraine could basically just make a small ameliorative gesture. For example, like a small prisoner release or some humanitarian gesture or something like that. Make sure it's really well publicized and put pressure on the Kremlin to make a very small ameliorative gesture of its own that doesn't hurt them, right? So if the Kremlin refuses this, then Ukraine just gets stronger because, look, we did this we tried to stop this, we did this ameliorative gesture, and they didn't respond, right? So the West would become enraged. And the same way the Kremlin could do this in Ukraine right now. They could do some small ameliorative gesture, get it well publicized, and then put pressure on Ukraine to do just some small ameliorative gesture in response.
You're saying that's time, if either side wanted to de-escalate the conflict, they could do that.
Yeah. So this create.
I'm not sure they do.
An escalating series of de-escalations, if that makes sense. Any side in this war can do that by themselves right now.
Yeah, they could. Doesn't seem that that Putin is particularly interested in that. But then again, according to Putin, he's just there to defend the republics that had declared independence back in 2014 from alleged ongoing attacks. So, I mean, he doesn't seem like the de-escalation type once he's sunk his teeth into something. But I could be wrong. I'd like to be wrong.
Well, if you want a suggestion for formulating your proposal, I don't know who you're going to submit it to or how you're going to submit it, but one thing that you might want to note in there is the original meaning of the word parole was not about criminals at all. The original meaning of parole was when somebody was captured in war, and they were released because it's expensive to keep prisoners of war. They would give their parole that they would not return to the fight if they were released. And the reason that's important is because a promise given under duress is not legally or morally binding, but a parole is always given under duress, and it gets over that issue. So it's just something to consider when you're writing this thing up.
Ridley, can we keep you on and talk about something we have control over, which is New Hampshire? I'd love to get your opinion on the New Hampshire exit status.
Keep me on.
Okay, hang on here. More coming up here in moments. Because we really can't do anything about Ukraine and Russia except watch and see what's next. The number is 603-283-6160. You can join us here and share your thoughts. This is Free Talk Live.
Hey, you are going to love the movie Victimless Crime Spree. It's hilarious, heartwarming, and carries a ton of inspiring freedom messages. Feeling down about the lack of liberty in your life? You need to put on this film with some friends and have a good laugh. It's a true story about me and my friends in New Hampshire living free, singing, dancing, and getting arrested. Of course, it's all on video, and the bad guys, the cops, judges, bailiffs, and sheriffs, they all play their part like it's out of a movie or something. You would think we scripted the whole thing, but it's real life. Go ahead and have a watch, and if it's been a while, have another look. I guarantee you'll notice things now that you didn't notice before. And the best part is that you're going to walk away feeling a renewed sense of your own power. You are the master of your destiny, and you will be free in your lifetime. Victimless Crime Spree.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. President Biden says any use of chemical or biological weapons in Ukraine by Russian forces will be met with a response from the US and NATO. He was speaking after the Russians again spread a debunked conspiracy theory that the US has developed chemical weapons in partnership with the Ukrainian government. The Russian ambassador to the United Nations was condemned by the US and its allies for voicing that claim today at UN headquarters. At the White House, President Biden.
I'm not going to speak about the intelligence, but Russia would pay a severe price if they use chemical weapons.
The president also announced today that he's terminating Russia's access to preferential trading arrangements with the United States that were first granted back in 1996. There are concerns in Ukraine about the possibility of an attack on the capital Kiev after a stalled Russian military convoy could be seen regrouping and redeploying in the latest satellite images. Reporter Oz Kataji in Kiev says the military, assisted by volunteers, has now barricaded the city.
They've had plenty of time to reinforce now, so you've got concrete barricades, metal, anti-tank hedgehogs, really seriously enforced all over this city. And driving from point A to point B, it takes a really long time to do like a normal, what would be a 15-minute journey along main roads. You can't do in that time because you're stopped every couple hundred, 250, 300 meters by another one of these checkpoints, which you have to snake your way around.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky spent an hour on the phone with President Biden today. Russian President Vladimir Putin approved plans for thousands of volunteers from the Middle East to fight on Russia's behalf in Ukraine. The United Nations says it's received credible reports that Russia has used banned cluster munitions in the war zone, and the UN says more than 2.5 million people have already fled Ukraine, more than half of them to Poland. FSN's Ryan Thompson is in Warsaw today.
2 Ukrainians enter Poland every 3 seconds. Nationwide, solidarity is strong here, and local governments, businesses, and people have gone to extreme lengths to welcome refugees. The EU says the bloc needs to be prepared to possibly host 5 million displaced people from the conflict, which still has no end in sight. Ryan Thompson, Warsaw.
Other headlines this Friday. The highest court in Texas has rejected a legal challenge to the state's new abortion law, one of the most restrictive in the nation. India says its accidental firing of a missile into Pakistan was highly regrettable. It caused no injuries. And one of Sesame Street's oldest residents has died. Actor Emilio Delgado played the role of fix-it shop owner Luis for 45 years. He was suffering from blood cancer, was 81, and was a big star in our house. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, the phones are open and you can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. In the studio with you tonight, you've got Ian.
Nobody. And Chris.
We're going to go back to your phone calls and thoughts. And then coming up, Chris has a story about this bank transfer system that is being accused of rampant fraud. And we'll get into what their response is about that on the way.
Well, it's not surprising considering the entire banking system is based on fraud.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I figured that'd be a good topic here tonight. So we'll get into that. But first, we're talking also the latest on some of the latest out of Russia. But first, we're going to go back to Dave Ridley from RidleyReport.com. Dave, a longtime supporter of New Hampshire independence. As you know, the bill for independence, the constitutional amendment, was on the House floor for the very first time ever. A very historic event yesterday, even though it did not work out, as I don't think any of us really expected that it would. Only 13 people voted in favor of it out of 336, I believe, that were in attendance for the vote. But I don't think we had a chance to get your response and your thoughts on maybe what the next step should be. What are your thoughts, Dave, as somebody who's been involved in this thing from the very beginning?
First, I didn't get a chance to finish my thought on Ukraine.
Okay.
The objective in the Ukraine piece that I'm suggesting is aim for what happened in Finland in 1940, where you have a short war. Finland is not radicalized to any large extent. Finland got a chance to establish that you don't mess with Finland, but Russia got enough they won enough territory to sort of bury their dead. So that's what needs to probably be the aim of any peace in Ukraine, is try and repeat kind of what happened in Finland, where the country's not destroyed, the war's short, there's no appeasement, the line is drawn. But Ukraine gets to prove that it's the badass, but Russia also gets a little bit of territory. That's probably, again, it happened in the Finnish War, and it was not such a bad outcome. So that's probably the aim here. I mean, it's better than appeasement, and it's better than nuclear war.
Okay.
Well, I think you should give Putin and Zelensky a call and
let them
make
know
that suggestion.
Yeah. I suspect they're not listening to us.
While we're on the subject of Ukraine, I learned an interesting thing today, which is Facebook has changed its policy, and it is no longer forbidden to praise the segment of the Ukrainian military, which is explicitly neo-Nazi. And apparently it wasn't allowed to say anything positive about them, but you're now allowed to if they're fighting the Russians. But the interesting thing about that to me is that I wasn't really aware that there was a segment of the Ukrainian military which is explicitly neo-Nazi.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of important to know.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. In fact, that's one of the reasons why Putin says he's doing what he's doing. He says that one of his goals is to denazify Ukraine.
Yeah, well, that's definitely something that he's said. I think your average American would say that's just Russian propaganda.
Nope,
but no,
it's a fact.
they're really there, apparently.
You know what it sounds like to me? It sounds like an excuse to invade Ukraine, and a little more, even though there's probably there's probably some truth to it. But.
Well, it kind of goes a long way toward eliminating the idea that there's a good guy in this
No, there's
war.
definitely no good guys when it comes to governments in the world. So, Ridley, your thoughts on New Hampshire exit? Yesterday, the bill came up for a vote. It went down, sadly, with 323 to 13. But a lot of people are saying this is a good start. What do you think? What's your analysis of this?
Okay, I still wasn't finished. The article is at freaking.com about Ukraine, but freaking.com article about Ukraine.
Got it.
But okay, now I can talk about it. Now I can talk about independence.
Yes.
Yeah, this was. We've gotten further than we thought we'd ever get. This was not designed to get votes. It was designed to get attention, and it's absolutely achieving that. Apparently, we finally our great success is in defeat here right now because we've broken through, and all the media is talking about it. It seems like so. That's good.
Right, so the media is, of course, now gloating. Oh, yeah, it went down in flames, and New Hampshire state reps are saying they're with the union. And what are you seeing in the media? I saw there was an AP story about it that was getting picked up in a lot of places. Have you seen other national coverage?
I guess the Washington Post had something on it, and I haven't started looking yet. Actually, I was absorbing links that were posted by other people, and those are now posted. There's a post on forum.shiresociety.com where I've listed all the articles that I know of so far, but I haven't even started looking directly for articles yet. I've just been posting the ones that I accidentally ran into.
I am curious how they're kind of framing this now. Are they blaming this on like the Free Staters, like in the stories that they're writing up? Like
no, not that I've seen. I mean, certainly the Democrats
That's
on
too bad.
On their Twitter posts.
Well, right. That's kind of what I'm thinking. It's
the Democrats on their Twitter posts are absolutely blaming the Free Staters.
Right,
well,
right.
Good. That means we're getting a lot of press out of it, and people who didn't know there was a Free State Project are now going to hear about it from their crazy uncle who hates us.
And that's one of I actually think it would be a good thing for them to blame the Free Staters, because it brings attention to the movement and the fact that there are people working towards greater freedom, as opposed to if they don't, then I mean we might be making some progress here, but it's not to the same degree probably.
I mean, how many states have even had something like that introduced into the legislature in the last century?
I don't think we've ever had a state, as far as we've been able to find anyway, that has implemented some sort of constitutional amendment for independence.
In the last century, certainly nothing. But I've still asked the question, and I have not yet gotten an answer. Like during the Southern Rebellion, were there constitutional amendments down there, or was it just the legislatures who just declared we're out? How did that go? What were the processes in the different states down there?
That's an interesting question, and there have to be historians who know the answer to it. I mean, I know that there was a declaration made that, if I recall correctly, actually borrows a lot of language from the original Declaration of Independence.
There's
Dave?
Did you just say boo?
There's this idea, there's this concept, I call it the Tokyo Rose process. So Tokyo Rose, she used to report Japanese victories closer and closer to Tokyo, right. And it's just sort of the same way with this. Like the initial complaint about us was like, well, you're just some protesters at a building, and then it goes, well, you're just have some legislation. Well, now you're just some people who have legislation with 7 co-sponsors. Oh, now you're just people that have legislation that's gone all the way through the process and had a 3-hour hearing and 75 people showed up to support it. But now you're just these people that had the House vote on it. And now you're just these people that have massive publicity. So it's just we're moving forward.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's actually looking at this from a different perspective. They didn't vote to table it. They could have they tried, and they could have just gotten rid of it and not had 3 hours of.
It wasn't 3 hours; it was a half hour.
A half hour of debate or whatnot.
Hearing was the one we were at.
Yeah, he's referring to the open session where anyone could testify. But yeah, Ridley, one other thought before you go. What do you think should be next? What should we do differently in the next year? Should this thing be brought up as is a second time, or should there be a different approach this coming year, or what?
Well, one of the state reps a couple of months ago, she was declining to become a co-sponsor, and she told me, she wanted a study committee, so there is some support for a study committee. I think that we've gotten the conversation started, and that does one of the reasons for having exit legislation is that it creates a situation where now people are starting to talk about the details and how it would work. And that's a really important conversation that, for instance, Slovenia did not really get a chance to talk about that much before they were independent.
We certainly have plenty of time at this point. Thank you, Dave, for the call tonight. Dave Ridley there from RidleyReport.com. We continue at 603-283-6160. You can join the show. We'll get some audio from the House floor with NH Exit on the way. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means, stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to mymagicmud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. mymagicmud.com, FTL20.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. The phones are open here. You can join us at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. In the studio here tonight, it's Ian.
Nobody. And Chris.
You can bring up anything you want. And don't forget, Free Talk Live is brought to you by Bitcoin.com. Ready to learn about cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash? You can do that over at Bitcoin.com. Just click Get Started at the top of the page. Of course, that's not all they have at Bitcoin.com. They got a ton of useful features. You can buy your first Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash or Dash or others. They got a bunch of different cryptos that you can purchase directly there, I believe, just using your debit card. I've not tried it myself because I'm not allowed to buy cryptocurrency under my bail conditions, but I've seen the option. You can go to Bitcoin.com, look around. There's a lot of cool features there. And if you're not brand new to crypto, you want to get the latest news headlines, just head over to news.bitcoin.com. That's news.bitcoin.com. As we head to the phones, to the fun, we got Steven on the line in Georgia, North Georgia. You're on Free Talk Live. Steven.
Hey, so I heard y'all's conversation. I thought it was fairly interesting about how southern states seceded. I can't speak for every southern state, but I know that Georgia, essentially our Georgia State Congress voted on it in 63 to secede.
Okay, so it wasn't put to a vote of the people. It was just the Congress directly who said they want out.
No, and the way that the Georgia school system wants you to understand Georgia's sovereignty is we separated ourselves from Great Britain, and then we chose to unite ourselves with the United States. And then in 1863, we chose to walk away from that agreement. And then depending on who you listen to after that, either A, the evil United States forced us back in with violence and Reconstruction, or B, we lost the war, therefore we had to submit. And so that's one state. I can't speak for the other six, but that's one state.
I'm curious, though, when they voted, was it a law that they passed, or was it a constitutional amendment? How did that come to be?
It was essentially a law.
It was just a regular law, a regular old law. 51% needed to declare it.
Georgia's secession from the Union followed nearly 2 decades of increasing intense segregation. But that's not the article. It was a fairly clean-cut vote. I think it was like 280 something to 35.
Oh wow!
Yeah, because once again, you have to remember the South. And I'm not taking sides here, but the South said that this was a war on states' rights and it was going to affect the pocket. Well, what's like Georgia, like to this day, our emblem, our seal is cotton, right? So when you tell everyone that you're going to take away their cotton and their ability to produce cheap cotton and their ability to feed themselves, very few people are going to say, yeah, let's stay a part of that system.
I'm with you, Stephen. Anything else you want to share tonight?
Yeah, if New Hampshire secedes, I'm moving.
Groovy. Can I suggest that will probably happen quicker if you make the investment in coming up here and helping us work on getting out?
Yeah, definitely.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there that just don't have the commitment. I would love for those people who say, because there's a lot of people like that who say, oh yeah, I'll come on up if y'all secede, so okay, we get to do all the work. And then you just get to come on up and enjoy the benefits, which you certainly would be free to do in a free New Hampshire, because hopefully we would have open borders and true freedom here. But yeah, we could get this done a lot sooner if everybody who said they were going to come later would just come now and get this done. Thank you for the call, Stephen. Appreciate it. The number here is 603-283-6160. And there's people who've said that about almost every issue. Yeah, if you guys legalize weed, I'm coming up there.
Yeah, right.
Okay, well... We're not really that excited about that because you're not going to help us now, so why would you help us later?
The way you accomplish these things is not by waiting until something happens. It's by going and doing it.
Yeah.
And then you do. And
that's the nice thing about New Hampshire is we get the doers. We get the people who are willing to get started and do things right now.
We definitely punch above our weight class, I guess. It definitely in terms of like politics in New Hampshire. We make up a very small minority, but we have a heck of a lot of reps, and support and everything else. And it's because we get out there, we do the activism, we run, we throw more people up to run for office, so more people get elected. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter what you say. It's just the fact that you put more people up, more people get elected. So,
yeah, I'm just looking here at a story about state secession back in the 1800s, South Carolina, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, and it does look like they had delegates. So it wasn't a straight-up vote of the people. It was they had like secession conventions, and delegates went to that convention and they voted there to secede. So I don't see anything just here at a glance that there was any kind of vote of the people.
Or is it? I don't know. Are there other kind of conventions?
It's at a secession convention here, so some sort of a special convention to secede or vote on it. It does say here that in Tennessee there was a vote, apparently. There was a statewide election, and they had rejected secession at that time. And then the delegates then voted for secession after that fact. So maybe Tennessee did have an actual vote. Anyway, if you know more and you want to weigh in here, you're welcome to join us at 603-283-6160. But as far as a constitutional amendment is concerned, I've not seen anything about that ever happening before. And the thing I really like about New Hampshire's approach, or at least its first attempt, which hasn't worked this time, but usually political things don't work the first time, so it takes multiple attempts. I like the idea of the constitutional amendment because it requires a supermajority.
Yeah.
And so there's no one who can say, oh, that was just a fluke vote or whatever. Oh, you got 51% by a nose, right? Most people still didn't want this. They just didn't show up at the poll. No, if you get 67% of the people who vote to say goodbye to the United States, I mean, that's pretty much a mandate at that point. There's no doubt. It wasn't even close, right? So that's good. And plus, it then has to get through 60% of the state house and 60% of the state senate. So the bar is high, and that means it's going to be difficult to accomplish that. We have a lot to do in order to make this thing possible. And one of the things that needs to get done is some of these pro-America, pro-union, pro-empire state reps, they got to get voted out. I mean, they just have to get replaced.
The modern Tories.
And I mean, and some of this is we need to throw more people up to run, more liberty-minded people up just to run for office, because a lot of these people aren't hard to get elected. It's just numbers. You need to have enough people running in order to get them elected. If you just don't have anybody running against the only opponent, if there's only one person running and they're not one of your people, there's no way for your people to get elected into office to actually make the change. So this is one of the reasons why you need to have more people moving, and
absolutely
moving and doing, and we have that.
That's happening, and we're at record levels now with movers, and hopefully more coming this year. It certainly sounds like it when we talk to the realtors like Mark Warden, the Porcupine Real Estate.
I've heard that he actually has had to turn people down.
He's had to hire staff because he can't handle the load.
Right.
He's super busy. Now two things are going to be different the second time around on this secession bill. Let's presume the same exact bill gets filed, and it can be filed, by the way, as soon as next year. Because
I thought it can only happen every 2 years. Is that only for
Let me clarify.
regular
The
bills?
let me clarify. The rule is it can only happen once per 2-year term. And so we're in the second year right now of the 2-year term. So the new term starts next year. So they could file it next year, or they could file something different next year and then wait till 2024. But it could be filed next year. But let's say it is, and this whole process starts over again. Two of the objections that came up this time around, we're going to have evidence to say they don't apply, hopefully. One is the 13 people, the heroes that voted for this, with some people with an actual spine in the state legislature, the 13 men and one woman, the 12 men, one woman that voted for this. Will they get reelected in November? Of those who run for reelection, will they succeed at getting reelected? That's going to be, clue number one, that this issue isn't a career killer, because there's a lot of state reps who are concerned that they're not going to get elected if they vote for this. So they may support quietly, they might agree with state independence, but they're afraid of what the voters are going to do.
I honestly, when you look at the fact that they didn't table it, it seems like they listened. The fact that
No. They only didn't table it because the Democrats wanted to get a roll call vote so they could target the people that voted for it. But regardless, it still worked for us because we wanted to get a roll call vote so we could target the people that voted against it.
Okay.
And the other thing is, so not only the question is, can they be reelected? And if so, then that wipes that objection off the table, right? If these guys get reelected. Secondly, if no one is charged with treason, as the state reps were saying they would be, then that proves that there's no criminal charges that could happen to the state reps by going for this thing. And I suspect we're not going to see anyone charged with treason of these 13. There's more coming up here. Hour 2's on the way. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next, after the news, here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. President Biden says any use of chemical or biological weapons in Ukraine by Russian forces will be met with a response from the US and NATO. He was speaking after the Russians again spread a debunked conspiracy theory that the US has developed chemical weapons in partnership with the Ukrainian government. The Russian ambassador to the United Nations was condemned by the US and its allies for voicing that claim today at UN headquarters. reporters. At the White House, President Biden.
I'm not going to speak about the intelligence, but Russia would pay a severe price if they use chemical weapons.
The president also announced today that he's terminating Russia's access to preferential trading arrangements with the United States that were first granted back in 1996. There are concerns in Ukraine about the possibility of an attack on the capital Kiev after a stalled Russian military convoy could be seen regrouping and redeploying in the latest satellite images. Reporter Oz Kataji in Kiev says the military, assisted by volunteers, has now barricaded the city.
They've had plenty of time to reinforce now, so you've got concrete barricades, metal, anti-tank hedgehogs, really seriously enforced all over this city. And driving from point A to point B, it takes a really long time to do like a normal, what would be a 15-minute journey along main roads. You can't do in that time because you're stopped every couple hundred, 250, 300 meters by another one of these checkpoints, which you have to snake your way around.
Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky spent an hour on the phone with President Biden today. Russian President Vladimir Putin approved plans for thousands of volunteers from the Middle East to fight on Russia's behalf in Ukraine. The United Nations says it's received credible reports that Russia has used banned cluster munitions in the war zone, and the UN says more than 2.5 million people have already fled Ukraine, more than half of them to Poland. FSN's Ryan Thompson is in Warsaw today.
2 Ukrainians enter Poland every 3 seconds. Nationwide, solidarity is strong here, and local governments, businesses, and people have gone to extreme lengths to welcome refugees. The EU says the bloc needs to be prepared to possibly host 5 million displaced people from the conflict, which still has no end in sight. Ryan Thompson, Warsaw.
Other headlines this Friday. The highest court in Texas has rejected a legal challenge to the state's new abortion law, one of the most restrictive in the nation. India says its accidental firing of a missile into Pakistan was highly regrettable. It caused no injuries. And one of Sesame Street's oldest residents has died. Actor Emilio Delgado played the role of Fix-It shop owner Luis for 45 years. He was suffering from blood cancer, was 81, and was a big star in our house. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, what's the diplomatic solution, if there is one, to the crisis in Ukraine? President Vladimir Putin has several demands. He wants Ukraine to recognize Russian sovereignty over the Crimean Peninsula that Russian forces seized in 2014, and Russian sovereignty over the eastern cities of Donetsk and Luhansk. He demands Ukraine's demilitarization and an agreement that the country will be neutral, never joining NATO nor the European Union. The US calls those ideas a non-starter, but former US Ambassador to Moscow Thomas Pickering isn't so sure.
It is important that Ukraine not capitulate to divide itself. Crimea raises a specific and difficult problem, but the people of the regions might well have an opportunity to decide themselves with a UN-supervised election if President Zelensky and his team are prepared to go along with that. There are 2 things that are important here. Increase the punishment for Putin now, and secondly, begin to put on the table ways forward that do not capitulate, but indeed do provide an honest answer for the people of Ukraine.
For now, with the Russian onslaught in full swing, that all seems to be a long stretch, but it at least offers some contours for conversations that may one day begin. The main news again. President Biden says any use of chemical or biological weapons in Ukraine by Russia will be met with a response from the US and NATO. Russian President Vladimir Putin approved plans for thousands of volunteers from the Middle East to fight on Russia's behalf in Ukraine. The United Nations says it's received credible reports that Russia has used banned cluster munitions in the war zone, and actor Emilio Delgado, Luis from Sesame Street, has died at the age of 81. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
Congress today passed a landmark Social Security reform bill they estimate could save the troubled program billions. The so-called Grab Life by the Balls bill includes provisions to cut the cost of cigarettes in half, outlaws helmets, and adjusts the CDC's recommended amount of sleep from 8 hours a night to when you're dead. The bill's short-term initiatives aim to immediately cut Social Security costs in half by replacing senior citizens' monthly checks with vouchers for grain, alcohol, and extreme sports.
I got this coupon to motocross over a canyon. Better do my part to help the deficit.
Supporters in Congress say the cost will be offset by the so-called pussy tax on products such as sweaters, vegetables, hand soap, and flu shots.
America, would you rather die old, broke, and forgotten, or die a mother-f***ing legend?
The new program follows in the footsteps of the Life is a Cartoon Medicare campaign, which encourages seniors to run full speed off of cliffs and smoke sticks of dynamite.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live. You dial in, bring up whatever you want here. The number is 603-283-6160. Here tonight, it's Ian.
Nobody.
And Chris. 603-283-6160. You can join the show, bring up whatever is on your mind. We were talking a little bit about the New Hampshire exit amendment that did not succeed yesterday, sadly. 323-13 was the vote to kill the bill. And 12 brave men, one brave lady voted for this particular thing, voted to not kill it.
Well, you know what they say. If at first you don't succeed, try again.
Yes, indeed. And that is certainly going to be the plan here in New Hampshire. We have now gone further than any of the other secession movements in the United States. And I got to give a lot of credit to the Texans. I mean, they do have a huge level of support there. But unfortunately, the bottleneck in Texas is their political system. It's just not accessible. The powers that be have more control there. So the referendum that they tried to put forward last year, it was like January of 2021 when this thing was announced, it didn't even get into a committee.
Yeah.
So it didn't get a public hearing, which we had a public hearing, as you guys pointed out, was 3 hours in length that happened back in, I think it was January, when that transpired here. And then every bill has to get a public hearing in New Hampshire, and every bill makes it to the floor of the State House. And so they tried to table it. They tried to basically kill it before they killed it, which is what a tabling would do. It would prevent any kind of meaningful discussion or prevent any kind of meaningful vote. But luckily, the Democrats wanted to out anyone who would vote in favor of this thing, so they voted against the tabling, as well as presumably the 13 people that voted to not kill the bill. So Democrats plus the 13 was able to outnumber the Republicans who wanted to table the bill. And so then it went to an actual discussion on the floor. And I'm going to continue. I've got some audio from the State House floor. I think it'd be useful to play that here. Historic occasion. But first, let's go to Sarah. She's in New Mexico. You're on Free Talk Live, Sarah.
Okay, hold up. Yeah, I just wanted to say that our rail runner, there's a train service that goes from Albuquerque to Santa Fe. We now have the highest passenger number ever because the gas prices went up.
Mm-hmm.
So we have so many people riding the train, and I'm so excited. And we also upgraded. We got
You
Wi-Fi.
always get happy when other people are not.
What do you mean?
Well,
don't you think it's fun
They're
riding
not
the
taking the
double-decker
train because they want to take the train. They're taking the train because they're in economic pain. That was a lot of ain words there.
Enjoying other people's suffering is cringeworthy.
I don't know if that's where she's coming from on this. Sarah just likes it when people use public transportation. I don't think that she's experiencing Schadenfreude, where she's actually getting pleasure from other people's pain. Are you, Sarah? You're not getting pleasure from this, right?
Oh no! My excitement is over people that public transportation.
Yeah, see, she's just got a thing for choo-choos.
Okay.
She likes a choo-choo, and so whenever people are on the choo-choo...
They've got great trains in China. You should visit at least. You might like it there. There's no freedom at all. That sounds like your kind of place.
Actually, there was a guy...
Go
ahead.
Well, you know that I'm a green energy person, right? I'm a Democrat, and we're all about clean air, and that's the reason why I'm really excited. The less gasoline that we use, the less petroleum.
How does the train go on its, like, what makes the train move forward? Is it coal-fired?
I don't know.
Diesel.
Well, how do they? It's not those magnetic levitation trains that they got in Europe and Japan.
So it's probably, as nobody
trains.
puts it, running on diesel fuel, right? You don't know. You have no idea.
I guess they, but you know something, it's better than like 300 cars going to Santa Fe and back. That's more emissions.
Right.
Not if you want to go in the middle of the night.
I'm still trying to understand.
Or go somewhere the train tracks don't go.
Sarah, I got a question for you. Are you a communist or are you a Democrat?
Well, you know, have you figured out that the communists work with the Democratic Socialist Party? Don't you think that they're of the same party? Well, I mean,
do.
it's not. Yeah, it's not exactly the same, but the thing about it is that the communists have to work with the Socialist Democratic Party. The communist, the Obama was accused of being a communist. They call communist Kamala Harris. And Joe Biden, our Democratic Party is a socialist party.
Do you feel like people should be forced to ride the train? That they should have to give up their cars and everyone should have to ride the train or take the city bus?
No, not force.
Okay.
Not force, but it's available, so people are taking advantage of it. Since
Now, what
the gas
about
prices
using
are high.
force to put train tracks through places? Like, for instance, you might have to steal somebody's property from them and add new train tracks through there. Would you be in favor of that?
Well, isn't that called eminent domain? That happened to a lot of people.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's called. That's the euphemism for stealing people's property.
Eminent domain is just theft in 5 syllables.
Yeah.
You know what? I do support that. One condition, it means for the benefit of the whole society. If it's for the greater
who decides?
Our 500 owners in Washington.
I mean,
they own us. They make all our decisions for us. They can do whatever they want to us.
That sounds also kind of misleading because, like, is there anything that benefits the whole of society?
No, everything benefits some and harms others.
Right, that's correct. But that's the number of the breakdown. If it's going to benefit 90% of the population, and they're going to benefit, but maybe 5%, they'll lose their home or their whatever they have. And, you know,
Sorry.
I mean, that's
You can go live in the welfare houses with Sarah.
you know something? But nobody wants to sacrifice. That's the problem. And then
everybody wants to sacrifice. Nobody wants to be sacrificed. You know, they had the same problem in the Aztecs. The guy whose heart was getting cut out always fought back.
I don't know if we do those, but you know, I just want to say that we had a lot of problem when we were being the ART, the bus transit. A lot of people fought.
Whatever happened with that thing? You used to call in about this
Right.
rapid transit, this government boondoggle that was funded by the federal government or something, and it cost a ton of money. Did they ever finish that job?
Well, it has. And it's just wonderful. It's the best air conditioning. It's rapid, and it has really improved our
How many businesses
our
had to
city.
die because of that? Because there were a lot of businesses that were shut down due to this thing being installed nearby wherever their business was, and it basically killed their business because no one could get into the parking lot because, you know, construction crews out there for a year
Right.
or whatever. Do you have any idea how many businesses went under because of this?
Well, I don't really have the data, but that was a sacrifice.
But it was some of them.
Those people
You do
didn't want
admit
to.
that.
They didn't want to give it.
You're always happy to sacrifice somebody else.
Indeed. Thank you. Sarah is the one who decides what benefits society. Thanks for the call tonight. The number here is 603-283-6160. But that's the reality. People went out of business because of this rapid transit thing. So, you know, some homeless people could get from point A to point B quicker.
I guess they got thrown under the bus.
Indeed. So the number here, if you want to join the show, it's 603-283-6160. And if we are to, or when we are to secede, we will no longer be on the hook for these government development projects. Oh, did you guys hear that there was like a $1.5 trillion spending bill that the Congress just passed that no one had a chance to read?
Oh, yeah.
Do they
There's
ever?
2,000 plus pages, I think 2,700 pages, and it was voted in a day after it was introduced. So literally nobody read it.
Impossible.
And not me, the other nobody.
Yeah, absolutely impossible. No one could possibly read that. It is humanly impossible to read 2,700 pages of legalese, mind you, in 24 hours.
But I'm sure everything in it was for the greater good.
Oh, for sure. But
if you define the greater good as paying off cronies of the politicians.
In order to read it, you got to pass it, right, Ian?
That's what they say.
Yeah.
The number is 603-283-6160. There's another $1.5 trillion. Are we going to be at $40 trillion debt by the end of this year? Is that too crazy to suggest that that's possible?
All I know is prices going up on everything.
Nothing's too crazy when it comes to the federal government.
Yeah, it's true. More on the way here. You can join the show. It is Free Talk Live. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
When a lunar observatory detects a radio broadcast originating from Proxima Centauri, the nations of Earth discover their first contact with an alien race may also be their last. With the Proximans facing an extinction-level disaster, Earth must choose between sending a ship on a multi-year journey or allowing nature to take its course. Saving Proxima, a hard science fiction thriller by Travis S. Taylor and Les Johnson from BaneBooks.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it! You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
This is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends. I've run websites since 1996 and have used over a dozen web hosts in that time. AgristHosting.com is the only one that hasn't broken my heart. Agrist Hosting's uptime and service is stellar, and their DDoS mitigation is the best I've seen. That's important because if you tell the truth in this world, you'll ruffle feathers. And some people will try dirty tricks to silence your voice. No matter what the haters hit us with, Agrist Hosting keeps our websites online. If you have a mission-critical commercial presence or a world-changing activism site, you cannot tolerate any skullduggery. So go with agristhosting.com. Have a WordPress or blog site, but you're not satisfied with performance or uptime? Or just want raw hosting? Want to pay with Bitcoin? Agrist Hosting specializes in high-performance hosting with personalized service. Go to agristhosting.com and click on the button that says Get Hosted. That's agristhosting.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
How many lawyers does it take to change a light bulb? None. They'd rather keep their clients in the dark. There are too many lawyer jokes to count. However, there are some lawyers with more noble intentions. At the Institute for Justice, we bring the light to our clients. We are a non-profit public interest law firm with clear values and principles. At IJ, we fight for those whose most basic rights are denied by the government. Visit our website today at ij.org.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, and the phones are open here. If you want to join the show, you can. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. It's Ian, Nobody, and Chris in the studio. And Freedom's Phoenix is a liberty-oriented news aggregation site. If you want the newest and freshest stories and perspectives on current events from those who value liberty, you can find those at freedomsphoenix.com. They also have a daily dispatch that you can sign up for and stay up to date on science, technology, historical findings, liberty news, government overspending, and the rise of the police state. Freedom's with an S, phoenix.com. That's freedomsphoenix.com. We have been talking on and off about the New Hampshire exit bill that or constitutional amendment that got proposed, went through the process, ended up on the floor of the State House yesterday, where sadly it did die. It was killed 323-13, but it is, as you put it, Nobody, just the beginning of a long process, because whenever you start to try to change the political system, you got to expect you're not going to win the first time out.
Well, according to the medical examiner, it died of COVID.
I want to go to the State House floor here from the video that you can find over at video.freekeen.com. A full 30-plus minute long floor discussion. What exactly happened? We played some of it last night, the first two speeches, and this is the one from Brody Deshays. Now, this guy is the statist tool. He is the young guy that the pro-union people, the pro-empire side, has been using to try to threaten and intimidate the rest of the State House into doing their bidding. And so here is his speech.
Well, thank you for indulging me, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the members of the House for listening. And I know I'll be brief. I'll be succinct. First, let me say I'm amazed that I must speak as to why this is a bad idea, not only logistically but constitutionally. Why this is impossible, why it's improbable, and why it's a violation of our oath to the U.S. Constitution and to the state of New Hampshire's Constitution.
It is none of those things, but we'll get into that as he divvies up what he has to say.
I mean, if New Hampshire became was successfully seceded, it could well be that the such government as we had here was closer to what the Constitution mandates than what they have in America, which is nowhere near what the Constitution.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a friend of the Constitution, you should be figuring out how to put it out of its misery because it's being tortured.
Yeah, as Matt Sandonastasso, who's a Free Stater and a state representative, one of the co-sponsors on the bill, said in his speech, which we played that yesterday, he pointed out that the U.S. government has violated the Constitution countless times.
Routinely.
If it was an agreement, it's been violated, like you said, over and over.
And once a contract has been breached, it ceases to be a contract.
And the crazy thing is, it's almost like, if you're talking about like courts, it's almost impossible to get them to take your constitutional rights into account. It just doesn't happen.
Right? I do not legislate.
Oh, by the way, if you want to play a drinking game at home, don't do it while you're in the car, please. But whenever Brody says the word right as he's speaking, go ahead and take a drink.
Based on hashtags, and I do not think we should either, just because something is purportedly trending, which I'm not on Twitter, so I've never seen it, right? But let's be honest, let's be frank about what this is right now. This is a historic moment, not just in the state of New Hampshire, but it's a historic moment in America. This is the first time a legislative body has debated and will vote upon binding secession.
No, that is not true. Now, it may be one of the first times that a constitutional amendment, and we haven't been corrected on this yet. If there is a correction, feel free to call in at 603-283-6160, but a constitutional amendment that would allow the people to vote. The binding part of this is not something that the that the representatives are voting on. They're not voting on binding anyone to anything except putting something on the ballot. That's all that they were voting on here is, should this question about peaceful independence for New Hampshire, should that be on the ballot?
Well, I mean, if you're representing the federal government, you should open with a lie.
Yes, and there will be many lies here coming from him.
Other secession movements that we've talked about, many of those are non-binding. They never get actual votes and debate on the floor. This is binding. It will be the first one debated since prior to the Civil War. That's a historic moment. That's also concerning that we're joining a very bad group of states that tried to overthrow the U.S. Constitution, right? That tried to...
No, not right. They did not try to overthrow the U.S. Constitution.
This is absolutely crazy, too, because that's not what this bill would do. An independent New Hampshire does not get rid of the U.S. Constitution.
Not in any way.
In every other state, you would still have the U.S. Constitution. In New Hampshire, I guess I don't know exactly how this would unfold, maybe, but we would still have a Constitution in New Hampshire.
The New Hampshire Constitution was written before the U.S. Constitution. It's still in place, and it would still be in place, and the U.S. Constitution, as you say, would still be in place. Right. We would just be out of it.
And I think a lot of people don't understand this, but a lot of the state constitutions are they're actually stronger than the United States Constitution.
New Hampshire's is certainly
right. So that's the case for most states. So like this idea that we would lose all our rights or something of that nature is
he's
nonsense.
Not even saying that.
Yeah,
he's worried about the Union.
I know.
Overthrow a constitutionally elected and a constitutionally instituted government. I do not think this body should join such a group of states. We should not be joining those former Confederate States of America who were deemed treasons.
You wouldn't be. If they voted for this thing, all you would be doing is letting the people decide, which those other states didn't do, by the way. It was in the southern states, the representatives, the delegates or whatever, who voted for secession, not the people themselves.
It's also, you're still not, and another crazy thing about this is he's suggesting that we be joining the southern states like during the Civil War. This isn't the Civil War, right? We can't join even if
he's just saying we'd be bad boys like they were. That's what he's saying.
Guilt by crazy.
We'd be in bad company. Though it's been 150 years.
That's just crazy.
Or whatever.
Well, of course, if we did vote to secede, the other group of people that voted to secede from a union was the Founding Fathers when they voted to secede from Great Britain. Which
was illegal.
We talk about the Revolution and the Civil War. Well, guess what? The Revolution wasn't a revolution, and the Civil War wasn't a civil war.
Yeah.
They were both wars of secession.
Yeah, and what's interesting is this independence is more representative of not the Civil War, but the independence from Great Britain.
Yes.
Both of them were empires, right?
Yep. This one's worse.
Right. This one's worse. So if
the taxes are worse, the empire is worse. The warmongering is worse.
Right.
We go on.
Right? I see right over my right-hand shoulder here the man who beat back those who challenged our Constitution.
Guess who he's talking about? He's talking about a picture of a historic figure.
You wouldn't know it from what he's saying, though.
It's Abraham Lincoln.
And defended it, right? The most U.S. service...
Abraham Lincoln violated the hell out of the Constitution.
Yeah.
He suspended habeas corpus without a vote from Congress. He imprisoned newspaper editors who disagreed with them or exiled them. And there's not even a notion of exile in the American
And he
legal
didn't give a damn about the slaves.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but he was a slave owner.
I am not sure. It wouldn't surprise me.
I'm pretty sure he was a slave owner.
He sure as hell didn't give a damn about them. He said whatever it takes to keep the Union together. Didn't matter to him. The number here is 603-283-6160, but DeShay sure does like Abraham Lincoln.
Yep.
And he's pandering to him. There's more coming up here, and you can share your thoughts. We'll share more of this guy's speech. It's Free Talk Live.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Karl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Karl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. President Biden says any use of chemical or biological weapons in Ukraine by Russian forces will be met with a response from the US and NATO. He was speaking after the Russians again spread a debunked conspiracy theory that the US has developed chemical weapons in partnership with the Ukrainian government. The Russian ambassador to the United Nations was condemned by the US and its allies for voicing that claim today at UN headquarters. At the White House, President Biden.
I'm not going to speak about the intelligence, but Russia would pay a severe price if they use chemical weapons.
The president also announced today that he's terminating Russia's access to preferential trading arrangements with the United States that were first granted back in 1996. There are concerns in Ukraine about the possibility of an attack on the capital Kiev after a stalled Russian military convoy could be seen regrouping and redeploying in the latest satellite images. Reporter Oz Kataji in Kiev says the military, assisted by volunteers, has now barricaded the city.
They've had plenty of time to reinforce now, so you've got concrete barricades, metal, anti-tank hedgehogs, really seriously enforced all over this city. And driving from point A to point B, it takes a really long time to do like a normal, what would be a 15-minute journey along main roads. You can't do in that time because you're stopped every couple 100, 250, 300 meters by another one of these checkpoints, which you have to snake your way around.
Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky spent an hour on the phone with President Biden today. Russian President Vladimir Putin approved plans for thousands of volunteers from the Middle East to fight on Russia's behalf in Ukraine. The United Nations says it's received credible reports that Russia has used banned cluster munitions in the war zone, and the UN says more than 2.5 million people have already fled Ukraine, more than half of them to Poland. FSN's Ryan Thompson is in Warsaw today.
2 Ukrainians enter Poland every 3 seconds. Nationwide, solidarity is strong here, and local governments, businesses, and people have gone to extreme lengths to welcome refugees. The EU says the bloc needs to be prepared to possibly host 5 million displaced people from the conflict, which still has no end in sight. Ryan Thompson, Warsaw.
Other headlines this Friday. The highest court in Texas has rejected a legal challenge to the state's new abortion law, one of the most restrictive in the nation. India says its accidental firing of a missile into Pakistan was highly regrettable. It caused no injuries. And one of Sesame Street's oldest residents has died. Actor Emilio Delgado played the role of fix-it shop owner Luis for 45 years. He was suffering from blood cancer, was 81, and was a big star in our house. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. You can join us here. The number is open for you at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. In the studio with you here, you've got Ian.
Nobody. And Chris.
We're getting the pro-government perspective, the pro-empire perspective against secession from Brody Deshays. He is 23 years old. He's one of the youngest state representatives in New Hampshire's 400-person state house.
Well, there's still hope for him then. I was a socialist at that age. I got better.
This guy is supposedly a Republican. He is, by the way, one of the worst-ranked Republicans on the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance rankings. They come out with a ratings card every single year with all of the state reps ranked based on their votes. Like, how do they vote? Do they vote in favor of liberty more often than not, or not so much? And this guy is one of the worst when it comes to the Republicans. Obviously, there's a lot of Democrats that are worse than he is. But when he's giving this speech, you might hear some applause. it's the Democrats who are actually applauding for his speech. Now, the Republicans, for the most part, voted against the independence bill as well, but for whatever reason, they weren't as applaudy as the Democrats in the audience. And you could tell who the Democrats were because they all sat together. They all had masks on, all except for 3 of them. I counted.
Are they still masky?
Yeah, no.
Oh, good God! I thought everybody got over the pandemic once Putin.
They're still
cured
signaling.
it.
They're still signaling hard.
It's definitely interesting. I've actually noticed that there's still people wearing masks. And I think there was, I counted in, what was it, like Chipotle the other day?
Mm-hmm.
I think there was about 20% of the people in Chipotle were wearing a mask.
Does that include the staff?
That included the staff as well. So it might have been the lower, if the staff, were not included.
Right, because they're a corporate store, so they're all
so they were
masked
mandated
up.
possibly. But yeah, I mean, it was interesting because Keene, there is no mask mandate. I don't even think there's a mask mandate in New York anymore, right?
I believe they got rid of it except for children in New York City.
Like the children are required to wear masks?
Oh yeah,
young
that's
children.
happening
that makes no sense.
over the country. They're making the children wear masks, even though they were never at risk from COVID.
Nope.
And I think it's just part of trying to crate train the next generation to make sure that any independent thought is snuffed out,
and disconnect them from any humanity and the ability to even see someone smiling.
People were saying about how making kids wear masks was abusive, and I kind of always rolled my eyes to that. But now that the adults are like not required to wear masks, and you're requiring children to wear masks, that is clearly abusive.
Oh yeah,
especially
as they were playing
given
the Super Bowl without masks. There were children playing sports in the same city who were mandated to wear masks.
Man, so
and
sick.
Kids are falling out all the time during athletic events because they're masked.
Wow. Yeah, I would definitely not expect somebody to wear a mask during an athletic event, given the need for air and oxygen.
Let's go back to Brody DeShays from the floor of the State House. Here he goes.
Members that have died in any war was a civil war. This body should not be proposing legislation that could throw us into the maelstrom of war, right? Into the jaws of certain defeat.
Don't leave your wife. Don't leave your husband. He'll kill you.
Yeah, well, I mean, really, the argument that these statists, that these unionists have is the argument from fear. I mean, that's what it all comes from. Oh, they're going to start a war with us. Oh, they're going to come. They're going to come at
They
us.
love us so much that if we try to leave them, they'll kill us.
That's right.
It's fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
Yep, sure is. Here's more.
It's a terrible thing to do to our constituents, a terrible thing to do to granite staters.
The terrible thing he's talking about would be to simply put something on the ballot so the people can vote for it. If he believes that the people of New Hampshire are against secession, it would go down in flames on the ballot. What's to be so worried about?
And it's the crazy thing about this is he's literally attacking democracy, right?
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
Because
so are the Democrats.
He doesn't want us to vote. He doesn't want the people of New Hampshire to vote. He wants to take away our right to vote.
Yeah, I got to tell you what one of the Democrats said to me, because at one point all the Dems were coming in together. You could tell they all had masks on, right?
Yeah.
So they're all coming in together. And one of them actually admitted, I'm sorry, was an email, but one in person said he's a gatekeeper. He doesn't want to let the people vote. And in an email, one of them said to me, quote, legislators can absolutely not trust voters with this decision, unquote.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's what they think about democracy. They're the gatekeepers for the people.
Yeah, and that's kind of interesting because it's acknowledging that democracy is a failure.
It's a fraud.
It's a fraud. It's a failure.
And they claim to be all about it.
Yeah.
So let's also be clear about a number of other things when we discuss the Constitution, because I'm looking at this strictly from a constitutional issue, right? The federal government is the only legitimate power to admit new states and extend or retract territorial boundaries. This is quite clear in Article 4.
This has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with the right to leave.
Yeah, are we trying to admit a new state?
Yeah.
No. Are we trying to change the territorial boundaries? No. We're talking about state secession. The state was its own nation before joining, and it will be able to leave. We're not asking them to retract their territory. Territories are not states.
Yeah, and allowing somebody to do something is so, it's different. It's not the same thing as like requiring them to do something. They can allow a state or a territory to enter, but mandating it, or forcing them to is a totally different matter.
Section 3 of our state constitution. Our state has never within its constitution and never has the federal government suggested that states can decide that they can leave or to join the government unless the federal government allows so.
The government didn't suggest that because it wasn't written into the Constitution about secession, which means that it's not included in the Constitution, which means that it's a right reserved to the states under under Amendment 10 of the U.S. Constitution.
I'm still amazed by this argument because, at least for New Hampshire, and I believe some other states as well, it predates the U.S. Constitution, and we still have the New Hampshire Constitution.
Yeah.
So if it authorized it, then clearly it can take it away as well.
And the New Hampshire Constitution also has provisions like the right to revolution, which very clearly reserve the right to say, you know what, we can take down any government that we want to if we don't think it's working.
And doesn't even the United States Constitution also include something of that provision as well?
No.
I thought it did.
The closest it comes is the Second Amendment, which implies
the right to bear arms.
Right
Isn't that also the whole implication of that? Isn't that what they're always arguing when they're arguing against gun rights? Is that the whole point of that was for a militia in order to?
Yeah, but that's not explicit as to what the point of that is.
Okay, fair enough.
But the point is, because the U.S. Constitution doesn't say anything about secession, it therefore is not prohibiting it.
Right, and that is in the Constitution itself, where it says, anything that's not reserved is delegated to the state or the people.
It's the 10th Amendment. All powers not delegated to the federal government are reserved to the states or the people thereof.
Correct. So of course the federal government has the power to admit. Right? You can't just join a club without permission, right? So of course they have a process to admit someone into a territory or whatever into the union, but there's no process for leaving because it's on the state. The state gets to decide. The state doesn't have to ask permission. Why would the people who just had an issue leaving a government, which I'm talking about the UK, the Prince or King George, why would the people who had that issue not leave a door open for the people who want to leave their new union? It doesn't make any sense.
And the whole process for the United States or forming the United States was ratification by the colonies in the first place.
And the interesting,
so it's like obviously the colonies or what became the states had the power to do it. And so if they had the power to do it, they can obviously undo it.
And if you read the Articles of Confederation, the first words in it say this is a perpetual union. Those words were not carried over to the Constitution. Well, if they'd wanted to make it a perpetual union, they could have done so.
But even if it was,
chose not to.
even if they did say perpetual union, the union doesn't go away if New Hampshire leaves.
That's correct.
So because
we still have it.
And remember, we have added states, right? We've added territory. So obviously, if we can add territory, if it changed the union, we can change the union in the other direction as well.
Indeed. The number here is 603-283-6160, but the difference is we don't have to ask permission to leave. We just say we're going.
Just say no, baby.
We're gone.
Say no.
We're out. There's more coming up here from this arch-statist on the way. It's Free Talk Live.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. Free Ross freetalklive.com.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better, too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20 mymagicmud.com.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 27th through July 3rd for the 6th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out for the first time in 2021. Fork Fest takes place the week after Pork Fest, but Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 27th through July 3rd. There's no better place to celebrate Independence Day than around other freedom-loving activists in the Shire. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest Forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there. Forkfest.party. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
There are basically 2 types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, the phones are open. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. 603-283-6160. Joining you in the studio tonight is Ian.
Nobody. And Chris.
And you can join us online anytime over at freetalklive.com. We have a social media site, and we run the thing. It's on our server. That means Twitter and Facebook, they don't apply. They're not involved. They're not connected. And you can go and get connected to our social media server, which is running Mastodon, an open-source, self-hosted, federated system, which is very, very cool, and it works great. Social.freetalklive.com. There are apps for whatever your favorite operating system is, Windows, Linux, Android, iOS, and there's a bunch of them, too. So there's more than one app, which is the coolest thing, because you can try like 3 or 4 different ones or more and see whichever one is your favorite. Use that one.
Yeah, and it works with other systems. So even if you've got Mastodon already, maybe you're not on our social media instance, that's okay. You can still subscribe to
you can follow people.
Yeah, you can follow people on our feed.
Very cool. Check it out at social.freetalklive.com. We go back to your phone calls and thoughts, and then more from the floor of the State House with the very first time ever that the constitutional amendment for allowing the people to vote on secession, peaceful secession, was heard on the floor of the State House. We'll continue with the arch-statist, pro-union, pro-empire speech here in just a moment, but Bad Slave is up first.
Yeah, I just think it's very interesting that, in fact, Abraham Lincoln, decided basically on his own to vilify the southern states and to basically turn them into rubble.
Mm-hmm.
And, if that's a possibility with the central government we're dealing with, why would anyone want to continue a relationship with that?
Well, there's plenty of battered people who believe that, they can change their man or whatever, right? So there's all kinds of excuses to stay with an abuser.
Despite all the battered women out there, I still like mine plain.
Well, the thing is that, there seems to have been very little argument over the whole might makes right arrangement that had the what they call the Civil War a positive thing.
Might makes right leaves little need or room for argument.
Right. When we have North Korea and Cuba and the Soviet Union when that existed, and any other nasty communist dictatorships, they don't let their people leave, and the idea that the United States would put us into a war. What are you going to do? Just go in and take out as badly as they did the South?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I don't think that they would personally, because again, there would be presuming this thing passes with 70%, which is would have to pass with at least 67%. That still leaves 30% of the state that are loyalists. 30% of the state would be empire supporters, and then are they going to bomb their own people? Thank you for the call tonight. Appreciate it.
Well, hopefully they would evacuate, or many of them would evacuate and be replaced by liberty lovers.
That'd be nice.
And here's the other thing about what Duche said. Ultimately, even if it was socially acceptable to beat your wife, during the Civil War, it's not okay today. So we shouldn't be against the idea of states leaving today, even if people were against the states leaving, yesterday.
Yeah, and that's part of the point of this whole discussion. That's part of the reason why this bill was brought up, to get people talking about it, to get the issue out there, to get some news coverage, to get talk radio discussing the issue of independence, because the idea of a national divorce has been on a lot of people's minds and a lot of people's lips in the last couple of years. It's been trending on social media, and it's something that needs to be talked about, needs to be taken seriously, and so this is one of the steps in that process.
And a lot of people you wouldn't expect have talked about it. Bill Maher, for example.
Some Hollywood stars even have been supporting it. Matt Santanastasso mentioned Sarah Silverman. People on the left, like Ron Perlman, apparently, these are people who are supporting the idea of national divorce.
Yeah, and it makes sense that it would be. It makes sense across party lines, because if you think that the U.S. is too conservative, then it makes sense to want the conservatives to leave, or to want to leave yourself,
right?
So that your state is more aligned with you.
We continue here with Brody Deshays, the state rep, who is in this case repping the empire. We go on.
Right? There is no process for leaving this union. Right? The union.
We don't need a process because they didn't specify one. There is no process. That's part of the good. That's actually good news. The fact that they didn't put a process in means we don't have to go and ask for permission to leave. We can just say it's over.
I mean, we just marched in. We can just march out.
And here's the thing, too, right? There was if there was some sort of process to create the union, then why can't we do the same process in reverse?
Well, again, we don't need to ask their permission. There doesn't need to be a vote in Congress.
I agree. We don't. But I'm just saying, like, obviously, New Hampshire was part of the process to create the union, so the New Hampshire can be part of the process to remove itself from the union.
Yeah, and that process is, do we want to go?
Right.
Yes, we want to go.
Right.
Goodbye.
As mentioned in Texas versus White, 1869, Chief Justice Salmon P. Chase.
Chief Justice Salmon P. Chase was appointed by
Abraham Lincoln.
Abraham Lincoln.
I wonder if he also voted on the Dred Scott decision.
Good question.
That said slavery was constitutional.
In the case he's bringing up, this is the favorite case that the union people love to bring up, is this Texas v. White. And there's an interesting article that I found over at one of the Texas secession groups. I posted it on the NH Exit forum over at forum.shiresociety.com because it does always get brought up. But in short, the decision that they made in this case doesn't actually cite any constitutional basis for the decision. And they can't cite anything because, as we've pointed out, there's nothing in the U.S. Constitution that addresses being able to leave the Union. And as the article at TexasSecede.com points out, quote, it's also noteworthy that 2 years after the court decision, President Grant signed an act entitling Texas to U.S. congressional representation, readmitting Texas to the Union. So why would he have to readmit Texas to the Union if indeed there was no way for them to leave in the first place? So you've got two very contradictory actions here on the part of the U.S. federal government.
There was acts of Congress during the Civil War that were unconstitutional. And the Supreme Court, if I recall correctly, kind of just, they didn't care, right? And they were like, well, we're going to allow, this clearly unconstitutional, behavior because the whole thing was a violent war effectively, and war isn't about doing a procedure; it's about using violence to achieve your objective.
Although they
law.
did trouble themselves after the fact, not when it would do any good, but they did trouble themselves to make it clear that Lincoln's actions were definitely unconstitutional. His actions specifically in suspending habeas corpus on his own authority without consulting Congress.
And interestingly, the Texas versus White case came up because the government of Texas at the time went to the U.S. government and said, it was about bonds. So the
they wanted to enter into bondage?
No, like the money kind of bonds. U.S. bonds owned by Texas since 1850 had been illegally sold by the Confederate state legislature during the American Civil War. The state filed suit directly with the U.S. Supreme Court, which under the U.S. Constitution retained original jurisdiction on certain cases in which a state is a party. So after they seceded, they brought a case to the U.S. Supreme Court. Why did they? I mean, what a key error to go to the U.S. Supreme Court and ask them for any kind of favor, ask them for any kind of judgment at all.
You have to remember, though, that they effectively put into power the North, the people in the South after the Civil War. So it's a different
puppet government.
Yeah, it's puppet government.
All right, there's more coming up here in moments. You can join us. This is Free Talk Live. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. President Biden says any use of chemical or biological weapons in Ukraine by Russian forces will be met with a response from the US and NATO. He was speaking after the Russians again spread a debunked conspiracy theory that the US has developed chemical weapons in partnership with the Ukrainian government. The Russian ambassador to the United Nations was condemned by the US and its allies for voicing that claim today at UN headquarters. At the White House, President Biden.
I'm not going to speak about the intelligence, but Russia would pay a severe price if they use chemical weapons.
The president also announced today that he's terminating Russia's access to preferential trading arrangements with the United States that were first granted back in 1996. There are concerns in Ukraine about the possibility of an attack on the capital Kiev after a stalled Russian military convoy could be seen regrouping and redeploying in the latest satellite images. Reporter Oz Chatterjee in Kiev says the military, assisted by volunteers, has now barricaded the city.
They've had plenty of time to reinforce now, so you've got concrete barricades, metal, anti-tank hedgehogs, really seriously enforced all over this city. And driving from point A to point B, it takes a really long time to do like a normal, what would be a 15-minute journey along main roads. You can't do in that time because you're stopped every couple hundred, 250, 300 meters by another one of these checkpoints, which you have to snake your way around.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky spent an hour on the phone with President Biden today. Russian President Vladimir Putin approved plans for thousands of volunteers from the Middle East to fight on Russia's behalf in Ukraine. The United Nations says it's received credible reports that Russia has used banned cluster munitions in the war zone, and the UN says more than 2.5 million people have already fled Ukraine, more than half of them to Poland. FSN's Ryan Thompson is in Warsaw today.
2 Ukrainians enter Poland every 3 seconds. Nationwide, solidarity is strong here, and local governments, businesses, and people have gone to extreme lengths to welcome refugees. The EU says the bloc needs to be prepared to possibly host 5 million displaced people from the conflict, which still has no end in sight. Ryan Thompson, Warsaw.
Other headlines this Friday. The highest court in Texas has rejected a legal challenge to the state's new abortion law, one of the most restrictive in the nation. India says its accidental firing of a missile into Pakistan was highly regrettable. It caused no injuries. And one of Sesame Street's oldest residents has died. Actor Emilio Delgado played the role of Fix-It shop owner Luis for 45 years. He was suffering from blood cancer, was 81, and was a big star in our house. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, what's the diplomatic solution, if there is one, to the crisis in Ukraine? President Vladimir Putin has several demands. He wants Ukraine to recognize Russian sovereignty over the Crimean Peninsula that Russian forces seized in 2014, and Russian sovereignty over the eastern cities of Donetsk and Luhansk. He demands Ukraine's demilitarization and an agreement that the country will be neutral, never joining NATO nor the European Union. The US calls those ideas a non-starter, but former US Ambassador to Moscow Thomas Pickering isn't so sure.
It is important that Ukraine not capitulate to divide itself. Crimea raises a specific and difficult problem, but the people of the regions might well have an opportunity to decide themselves with a UN-supervised election if President Zelensky and his team are prepared to go along with that. There are two things that are important here. Increase the punishment for Putin now, and secondly, begin to put on the table ways forward that do not capitulate, but indeed do provide an honest answer for the people of Ukraine.
For now, with the Russian onslaught in full swing, that all seems to be a long stretch, but it at least offers some contours for conversations that may one day begin. The main news again. President Biden says any use of chemical or biological weapons in Ukraine by Russia will be met with a response from the US and NATO. Russian President Vladimir Putin approved plans for thousands of volunteers from the Middle East to fight on Russia's behalf in Ukraine. The United Nations says it's received credible reports that Russia has used banned cluster munitions in the war zone, and actor Emilio Delgado Luis from Sesame Street has died at the age of 81. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
It's the video sensation that's taking the internet by storm. A web series on YouTube passed the 100 views mark this week. Titled Andrew and John, the wildly popular webisodes feature roommates Andrew Vanier and John Haney playing fictionalized versions of themselves in unusual situations, mostly set in and around their Chicago apartment.
Dude, did you get my tart? What's a tart? Oh, you just texted me a fart.
Their latest short, titled Laundry Day, reached the unprecedented 100-view milestone this week after a heavy promotional push in which the duo posted the skits to their Facebook pages. The hit video features the roommates wearing unconventional outfits while scrounging up enough change to do laundry in their basement. Other popular episodes include Foreign Landlord, featuring John's friend Brett from work, and a video where Andrew suspects John might be a zombie.
Our videos consistently get over 50 views now, but Laundry Day, that's the first one that's really taken off.
Yeah, everyone I know has seen it.
It's completely viral.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, kicking off the third hour here, and you can join us. Phones are open, as always. 603-283-6160 is the number for you. That's 603-283-6160. Tonight, it's Ian.
Nobody.
And Chris.
We're going to continue with more from the State House floor. Yesterday, the historic bill, a constitutional amendment proposal of CACR 32 was heard in front of the full State House.
For the first time.
Yeah, that's right. And it won't be the last time.
Nope.
Whether the wording will change next time, I don't know. I like the wording personally that they went with this time around. As you said, Chris, it was very simple, very easy to understand.
There's one thing I think might be worth changing for next time around, and that's to remove the word peaceful.
Ooh, why?
It's not because we don't want peace. I think it's just it's I don't know. I think it's kind of to send a message.
I think we're peaceful sends a message.
Absolutely,
and we want to keep it.
But I think the point of removing it is to say this can change. It's not that we're advocating violence.
No, if they want to change it, then they're the ones who are going to change it. We're going to be peaceful.
But we're not the ones advocating violence here, right?
I understand that, but if you don't have that word in there, I think people could jump to a conclusion.
People
and if it's in there,
are
it's clear.
already jumping to conclusion whether the word's in there or not.
I like having it in there. I think there's no reason for us.
I do too.
Not to be peaceful. If we're attacked,
I do too.
Afterwards, then that's another matter.
I do too, but I think it's kind of like the porcupine. In that, you're peaceful until you're attacked, right?
Okay.
So, and it kind of sends that message of.
Well, this is all about like you're saying, sending a message.
Yep.
You want to send a message that this is intended to be a peaceful movement. So I hope that if that proposal gets made for the next one, that it gets shot down. But the number here, if you want to join us, 603-283-6160, and that's where Major Payne is, calling from Michigan. You're on Free Talk Live.
Yep. You're peaceful till you're attacked. Just
Yes,
like
sir.
going on in the Ukraine and just like went on in America here a couple of 100 years ago. There was only 3%.
Well, actually, the South fired the first shots in the Civil War, and that they shelled Fort Sumter. Oh,
the Revolution, not the Civil War, dude.
Okay, you're right. You're right.
There was only 3% of the population that supported the war. I mean, granted, we were fighting a dragon on the other side of the puddle, And now the dragon's in our own backyard, so it's probably going to take 10-15% of us to rise to make it even feasible.
We exchanged one tyrant 3,000 miles away for 3,000 tyrants 1 mile away.
Yes, that was written in the book. And as far as the unfettered, insane court, they handle 1% of the cases they're presented. I mean, this is like the three monkeys. You know, hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. They don't want to take on anything that is any kind of challenging. And it's oh God, I can't even think of a proper blah for it.
You're talking about the Supreme Court?
But, yeah.
The traditional humbug bah is always good. Bah, humbug.
Yeah, to me, the Supreme Court decision, Texas versus White, which Brody DeShays, the statist that we're playing audio from the floor of the State House, brings up, is completely irrelevant because it's just a court opinion. And there's a million opinions when it comes to law, and the Supreme Court has reversed itself plenty of times, and we're not planning to ask the Supreme Court for permission to go. It's not in the Constitution that they have the right to control secession, and so we just get to declare that we're leaving, and then we go and we act like we're gone, and that's all that it takes.
Yeah, I like the little point that you brought up during the Grant administration where they had to reseed Texas after they had seceded.
Yeah, very interesting indeed. Thank you,
we were
Major.
Adopted twice. How many names do I have now? But my original point I called in on was the gas prices.
Yeah.
And what did they call us? Unreplaceable workers. What was the word?
Essential.
Essential. Yes. I was an essential worker the whole time. And I go to the gas station and I go to the dollar store and, these girls are making $7-8 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And the nurses that are exposed to this, I mean, they're making 3-4 times that, but by God, we've all been in the battlefield. I've already kicked this thing's butt twice. I mean, this thing that we can't develop herd immunity is ridiculous.
Thank you, Major, for the call tonight. Appreciate it. The number is 603-283-6160. Back to the floor of
the gas prices would be so easy to solve. All you have to do is let American companies start drilling again.
Yep, absolutely. Deregulate the business.
Yep.
We continue here. More with Brody DeShays, the pro-Empire state representative, speaking on the floor of the State House yesterday during the hearing prior to the vote on the constitutional amendment to allow the people to decide, which was killed 323-13.
Explained in his majority decision, a 9-0 decision, a New Hampshire native, in fact, Salmon P. Chase was, but that he explained that the Union began during the Revolutionary War amongst the colonies. In his decision, he writes, quote, "We confirmed and strengthened and received definite form and character and sanction from the Articles of Confederation, and by these, the Union was solemnly declared to be perpetual." Right? The Articles of Confederation of Perpetual Union. That's the name of the...
We're not under the Articles of Confederation.
Yep, they were... it was never authorized, but they were dissolved when the Constitution was written.
Entire document. Our country was founded originally by that document.
But that's all that Salmon P. Chase could rely on in his decision was what this old document said, not the current one.
And interestingly enough, that supposedly peaceful or that supposedly perpetual union ended when
a few years later.
It did.
When the Articles of Confederation were rescinded.
Yep.
We then, Chief Justice Chase then explains that the current Constitution was ordained to form a more perfect union, and I quote, which extended to convey the idea of indissoluble unity. Therefore, the Union can never...
Which was never said anywhere in the Constitution at any point.
It's actually interesting, the choice of words there is it's the same words that Europe is using now with the European Union.
Oh, Brexit left.
They did, but they're talking about unity as far as Europe and Ukraine is concerned, and I think it's quite interesting.
When a politician talks about unity, it generally means he plans to sacrifice you to his god.
Yeah, and that's what this really sounds like. I mean, this decision from Salmon Chase and Brody reading it, it absolutely sounds like a religious text.
Yeah.
we're there's just the way they talk, the way they do everything. It's a really bizarre religion. We kind of talked about that yesterday.
Be dissolved. Anyone who thinks and purports that they can dissolve the union single-handedly is wrong.
That's not what we're purporting.
Yeah, there's no dissolution of the union if a state leaves. The union changes maybe, but it doesn't disappear.
We don't want to end the club. We just want to leave it.
New Hampshire is not declaring war on the United States. New Hampshire's not trying to take over the United States.
Y'all can have the union,
right?
Please. You can have all the union you want. If you love the United States, stick with it. They're going to tax you all the way till you die.
And you can have this guy, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll have to deport him if we do.
I thought you were talking about Ian for a second.
No. They can't have Ian.
No. Ian doesn't get to. No, they don't get to kidnap Ian.
Right? Let's also discuss the idea that this is a referendum. This is no mere referendum. New Hampshire has no referendum. We have no state statute, nothing in our state constitution that suggests that we have a referendum, right? We have a constitutional process for amending the Constitution. I look at it this way. This is a race, right? If you run a 5K, you go each kilometer, right? Kilometer 1 was the committee, which, by the way, rejected this 21-0, recognizing it was unconstitutional and un-American, right? Step 2 is we go to the House floor.
What could be more American than independence?
Yeah,
what could be more un-American than the American government?
And it's interesting thing about the committee, because some of the reps on the committee who were speaking on it didn't actually say that. Some of them actually said that were voted against it. They agreed with it. It's just that they weren't ready for it, or something to that effect. So,
well, there's a bunch of political cowards in the state legislature. The number here, if you want to join the show, 603-283-6160. We'll continue with more of this statist, unionist, pro-government, pro-federal tool.
Pro-slavery.
Pro-slavery. Brody DeShays here from the floor of the New Hampshire State House. And your calls and thoughts are also welcome here on Free Talk Live. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Brute force, intransigent defiance, adamantine will. These are the hallmarks of the AI tank. These gigantic machines have the firepower of an army, but they also have their own sense of honor and duty. When the world breakers arrive, battle will be joined, planets will shake, and war and peace will never be the same again. World Breakers. Stories from David Weber, Larry Correia, and more. Available August 3rd from BaneBooks.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Don't worry about things you can't control. Isn't that what they always say? But it's about impossible to avoid worrying about what's going on these days. The government has used the war on guns, the war on drugs, and the war on terrorism to tear our Bill of Rights to shreds. But you can fight back. The 10th Amendment Center has proven it, racking up major victories. For example, when the U.S. government claimed authority in the NDAA to have the military kidnap and detain Americans without trial, the nullifiers got a law passed in California, declaring the state's refusal to ever participate in any such thing. Their latest project is offnow.org, nullifying the National Security Agency. They've already gotten model legislation introduced in California, Arizona, Oklahoma, Missouri, and Kansas, meant to limit the power of the NSA to spy on Americans in those states. We'd be fools to wait around for the U.S. Congress or courts to roll back Big Brother. Our best chance is nullification and interposition on the state level. Go to offnow.org, print out that model legislation, and get to work nullifying the NSA. The hero Edward Snowden has risked everything to give us this chance. Let's take it. Offnow.org.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. You can join in here. The number for you is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Ian, Nobody, and Chris in the studio here tonight. You can join us online over at freetalklive.com. We've got RSS feeds that you can copy and put into your favorite podcast client. And then you will be subscribed to receive every episode of Free Talk Live that comes out as they are released. All you have to do to get those URLs is go to our feeds page at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. And there are different choices there. There's the full subscription, which has our full shows and the digest. There's digest only and full shows only. Head over to feeds.freetalklive.com as we go back to the floor of the New Hampshire State House yesterday morning. I guess it was actually yesterday afternoon, but it didn't take as long to get to it as I thought it would. They had like 24 bills to go through prior to getting to CACR 32, the New Hampshire Independence Constitutional Amendment, and they moved through them actually relatively quickly. I was kind of surprised, but they did break for lunch before they finally had the hearing on the floor of the State House, this historic hearing where the advocates for the centralized federal government gang got out and pulled out all their nationalism and all the threats of what could happen if New Hampshire were to declare its independence.
They want to make sure that we get our fair share of the $29 trillion federal debt.
Yes, and growing. I think didn't it cross 30 recently? I feel like it did. Anyway, we're going to go back to Brody Deshays. This is the guy who is defending the United States nation state. Here we go.
And we vote on it, right? Every step along the way that you continue to complete this 5K is aiding and abetting and making this policy come to fruition, right? By bringing this to the people, we are aiding and abetting in the process of undermining the U.S. Constitution and violating our oaths of office.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting argument I had not yet heard from this side of things.
I wonder if he's saying that it's treason, because it is treason to aid and abet the enemies of the United States. Does the United States regard the people of the United States as its enemy?
I mean, how does it undermine the Constitution? I'm trying to understand this, because the Constitution doesn't.
It makes the Constitution stronger because then you don't have to get rid of the federal government.
Yeah, I don't know. The Constitution doesn't say, the U.S. Constitution doesn't say you can't leave, as we were pointing out. So I'm not really sure how this undermines the U.S. Constitution.
It's pure fear-mongering. He's just pandering to the love of the Constitution. Oh, you wouldn't want to break that down now, would you?
But what he forgets is that love of the Constitution is based on its promise to protect us from all of the things that the federal government is already doing now.
Yeah.
Right, and I could go on regarding the 14th Amendment and a myriad of, this open question of what is rebellion, which is not defined in the U.S. Constitution, which quite frankly...
But it's defined in plenty of places. I mean, you can easily look up rebellion, and it always has to do with arming yourself and using violence against the state.
And it's interesting because in legal land, right, you're supposed to use the plain language of the... it's plain language is what you're supposed to do, and basically what that just means is it's the common understanding of it, right?
Unless
it's a
it's
dictionary
defined.
definition,
right? Then if the word is not defined in the law, then they use the dictionary definition,
right? And that was exactly what I was about to say. Is if it's not defined in the law itself, and because it's not defined, rebellion is effectively what is in the dictionary.
And that is armed violence against the state.
Can we look up what the word rebellion is in the dictionary?
Yeah, I've looked it up before. I've actually looked it up in a law dictionary as well as just the regular dictionary. And basically, the definitions are the same.
Yeah, it wouldn't matter anyway.
But yeah, I'll pull it up for you here. Rebellion is the act of armed resistance to established government or leader.
Yeah,
has to be armed, has to be violent.
Yep.
We go on.
After this vote, and now that it's roll called, there is a question of what do we do and how do we enforce the 14th Amendment, which we took an oath to the Constitution of? And I hope...
federal government's job, not yours.
I hope that we don't have to be answering that question on the House floor in the future. I hope that everyone says no to this constitutional amendment, because I would prefer not to see the partisan politics of trying to remove members of this House for arguably maybe violating their constitutional oath.
This guy doesn't even understand how the system works in the first place. I mean, just the fact that, he thinks that it's going to come before the, House, the New Hampshire, presumably talking about the New Hampshire House. And that's not how that works.
I would love to see them try to remove any of the 13 people who voted in favor of this amendment.
If voting for something unconstitutional was enough to get you removed from office, we wouldn't have a Congress, a Senate, or a president.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a good point. Or most of the state reps, for that matter.
There is, I guess there is in some respects, like, cops can enforce federal law, but it's
not the local boys.
It depends. Well, and this is the point that I'm trying to make, right? It depends, right? If the state allows it, right? Local or state cops can enforce federal law, but that's not necessarily the case. As in the case with weed and marijuana laws, those are not often in states that have legalized it. Local police and state police are not allowed to enforce federal marijuana law.
In most cases, they're not allowed to enforce federal law. They could turn over a case to the feds. They could turn over some evidence, as I understand it. But unless they've been sworn in or something by the federal government and they hold two cards, I don't think you see that happening.
I've never heard of somebody being elected by or being arrested by the local yokels purely for generating or violating a federal law.
I mean, in your case, you were arrested by local cops back in 2012 or 2011 for selling cannabis, and the feds were directly involved in that investigation, but you still weren't charged federally with anything.
I was charged under the state law.
So I don't know if that's the case at all.
That's my understanding, and maybe I am just maybe I am actually misunderstanding something. But
there are some officers who work with the feds. So, like in the Chris Cantwell case,
right?
There was a Manchester PD officer who was sort of like the federal FBI liaison.
Like I said, my understanding is you can be arrested by like a state officer for breaking federal law, but usually that's not what happens. You usually get charged with some sort of state equivalent.
I mean, technically, you can make a citizen's arrest, so I guess they could. But.
I'd be interested in seeing an example of it because I've never
I'm not a lawyer, obviously, here, so I don't know with certainty. But
with Brody,
it's deeply concerning to me. And so I hope that we can reject this. I hope we can stick with constitutional government. I hope that we can uphold the U.S. Constitution. I hope we can continue to uphold the New Hampshire.
Doesn't mean stick with unconstitutional government because
that's what we have.
Nothing the feds are doing is constitutional.
State Constitution. We should support the Union today, the Union tomorrow, in the Union forever.
Because he wants to be in the Union. He wants to be president, right? This guy definitely has his designs, his eyes on higher office.
Oh, yeah.
There's 49 states he could move to if we seceded.
Thank you.
All right.
Does the member yield to questions?
Yes.
Member yields.
I don't know if he got any questions.
Senator Klein Knight, you may inquire.
Okay, yes, he did get one question here from a Democrat.
Thank you so much, Representative, for taking my question. Have any of your colleagues decided on who's going to run for president of New Hampshire?
Is that supposed to be funny?
Nobody will. Because nobody should be the president of New Hampshire.
That's a weird question for somebody who's speaking against it.
Does she even know that New Hampshire had a president? Prior to joining the Union, New Hampshire had a president. They changed the Constitution to change the word from president to governor after New Hampshire joined the Union. So we'll just be going back to that. More coming up. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it. And once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world. So I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here. And I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. President Biden says any use of chemical or biological weapons in Ukraine by Russian forces will be met with a response from the US and NATO. He was speaking after the Russians again spread a debunked conspiracy theory that the US has developed chemical weapons in partnership with the Ukrainian government. The Russian ambassador to the United Nations was condemned by the US and its allies for voicing that claim today at UN headquarters. At the White House, President Biden.
I'm not going to speak about the intelligence, but Russia would pay a severe price if they used chemical weapons.
The president also announced today that he's terminating Russia's access to preferential trading arrangements with the United States that were first granted back in 1996. There are concerns in Ukraine about the possibility of an attack on the capital Kyiv after a stalled Russian military convoy could be seen regrouping and redeploying in the latest satellite images. Reporter Oz Kataji in Kyiv says the military, assisted by volunteers, has now barricaded the city.
They've had plenty of time to reinforce now, so you've got concrete barricades, metal, anti-tank hedgehogs, really seriously enforced all over this city. And driving from point A to point B, it takes a really long time to do like a normal, what would be a 15-minute journey along main roads. You can't do in that time because you're stopped every couple hundred, 250, 300 meters by another one of these checkpoints, which you have to snake your way around.
Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky spent an hour on the phone with President Biden today. Russian President Vladimir Putin approved plans for thousands of volunteers from the Middle East to fight on Russia's behalf in Ukraine. The United Nations says it's received credible reports that Russia has used banned cluster munitions in the war zone, and the UN says more than 2.5 million people have already fled Ukraine, more than half of them to Poland. FSN's Ryan Thompson is in Warsaw today.
2 Ukrainians enter Poland every 3 seconds. Nationwide, solidarity is strong here, and local governments, businesses, and people have gone to extreme lengths to welcome refugees. The EU says the bloc needs to be prepared to possibly host 5 million displaced people from the conflict, which still has no end in sight. Ryan Thompson, Warsaw.
Other headlines this Friday. The highest court in Texas has rejected a legal challenge to the state's new abortion law, one of the most restrictive in the nation. India says its accidental firing of a missile into Pakistan was highly regrettable. It caused no injuries. And one of Sesame Street's oldest residents has died. Actor Emilio Delgado played the role of Fix-It shop owner Luis for 45 years. He was suffering from blood cancer, was 81, and was a big star in our house. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
Free Join the show at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. In the studio here tonight, you've got Ian.
Nobody. And Chris.
And again, you can bring up anything that's on your mind. We've been talking about New Hampshire independence here as yesterday, this full state house finally heard CACR 32, the bill that would, had it been passed by the House and the Senate with over 60% voting for it, would have been put on the ballot and would have allowed the people of New Hampshire to vote on the question of declaring peaceable independence from the United States. Sadly, 323 of the 336 people that were in attendance out of the 400 possible said, nope, we're not going to let the people vote on that. No, we're the gatekeepers. We get to decide these things, and we don't trust the people to make decisions about their own political futures.
I mean, they stood up against democracy. They
did.
They stood up against the idea of democracy. If you don't think the people are wise enough to vote whether or not they want to be part of, the United States or not, what makes them, intelligent enough to vote for you in the first place?
Great question.
Well, apparently they were stupid enough to vote for them.
Or maybe that's maybe that's what they were saying is these people are stupid enough to vote for me. I can't trust that they will.
So after I don't know how long his speech was, more than 5 minutes speech of why people should be so afraid and continue to support the federal government gang and keep the union together, et cetera, with Brody Deshays, the tool of the state, he's finally sat down, and Mike Sylvia, the hero, the sponsor of the legislation, longtime supporter of Free Talk Live, by the way, longtime listener and supporter here. Love Mike Sylvia. He's a really great guy.
He rocks.
He's also, by the way, A+ rated Liberty rep in the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance. He is such a principled state representative. He gets A+, I believe, every time I've ever looked at the ratings. He's a multi-term rep. I think he's on his 5th term right now. So he spent most of the last decade in the State House, very experienced. And he won, actually, the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance Liberty Legislator of the Year award at least one time, as well as Mark Warden, who's another great Liberty rep, who, by the way, Mark Warden was one of the 13 who voted for this.
Gotta like it.
Yeah.
I gotta give him a thank you for your service next time
I'm
see
so
him.
glad I used when I moved to New Hampshire. I used him as my realtor. I'm so glad I did.
Yeah, the guy is awesome.
Yeah.
Mark Warden, I believe, is a 2-time winner of the Liberty Rep of the Year award, and Mike Sylvia at least a 1-time winner. So, in the 13 people that voted for this, there's 2 of the top best. Most principled Liberty reps. That should tell you something. This is good pro-liberty legislation, and shame on those so-called Liberty reps who did not support their fellow reps in this particular vote. They were too afraid of what the voters would think.
Although, to be honest, I'm more interested in targeting the worst representatives in the House than the worst of the best. So, there's a lot of F-rated reps in the House.
Yeah, but you only get to target where you live.
Those guys go.
You only get to target where you live. If we've got somebody who supports independence and supports liberty, and they're willing to primary one of these not-so-liberty reps, I say they should go for it. Why shouldn't they have to fight a primary battle?
You're absolutely right about that, Ian. I just don't know. I think what you're saying is that if we're going to be focusing like actual resources on it, like if we're going to go out and
I don't recommend spending resources on politics. What a waste of money.
I know you don't. I know you don't. But if we were, then it would probably be better off, attacking other people or going after and putting up other people to run against the people who are worse.
I do recommend devoting resources to running, and I have devoted resources to running in my time, my energy. I didn't have any money.
I think Ian's more talking about money because even he has devoted some amount of effort to
I've
running
gone
for
to
office
debates and things like that. That makes sense where you can make a personal appearance and it costs you, less than a tank of gas.
Now you do it for different reasons. It's to get the message out there.
Well, that's because we live in Keene. You can't win an election as a Republican in Keene. You have to be a Democrat, and we can't sneak into the Democrats because they know who we all are.
Not us. So, definitely not us.
We're in the least politically feasible area of New Hampshire.
Actually, if I run for governor this year, I will probably run as a Democrat.
That's what I'd recommend. because you have no chance of getting any attention, as we learned last time, against Sununu, and he's running again.
Oh, he is running again?
Yeah, he was going to go for U.S. Senate, but then he changed his mind because the polls weren't looking so good during COVID for him. And now he's decided he just wants to run again for governor, unless he changes his mind at the last minute again, which certainly is possible.
Well, if the polls weren't looking good, maybe he'll like the Ukrainians better.
But the other thing about the Democrats is the guy who ran against Sununu last time has left the state. He's gone.
Interesting.
He got beaten that badly.
He moved to Idaho or something like that. So he's gone.
Why would a Democrat move to Idaho?
I don't know.
Good
But
God.
he's not here anymore. So it's a wide open
It's like
field.
a libertarian moving to New York or California.
So I agree with you, Nobody. I think that'd be the best bet because it's a wide open field on the Democrat side. So you actually might get some attention from the media. All right, so Mike Sylvia takes the mic for what's called a parliamentary inquiry, which is this bizarre thing where you have to ask a question. So they have these little things they say to make it sound like a question, but it's really just statements.
Right.
So he has to say things in a very certain way. It's a very strange religion, the state. Going on here. Here's what he said.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if I know that New Hampshire did not delegate to the United States a power to prevent peaceful separation, and that the 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution recognizes the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Mr. Speaker, if I know that rebellion and insurrection are violent actions that stand in sharp contrast to the deliberative, thoughtful, and cordial process brought by sponsors and supporters of this amendment. And Mr. Speaker, if I know no member of this body should be threatened with retribution for their vote here today, and we should all take to heart the words of Article 30 of our Constitution, the freedom of deliberation, speech, and debate in either house of this legislature is so essential to the rights of the people that it cannot be the foundation of any action, complaint, prosecution in any other court or place whatsoever.
Translation, they should be free to say anything they want to while they're in that chamber, and they cannot be prosecuted for it.
It's not like they're on Twitter.
It's in the Constitution of New Hampshire.
Yeah, Deshay was, effectively suggesting, violence against those who would vote
treason.
Vote for this constitutional amendment.
And Mr. Speaker, finally, if I know that this amendment reinforces Article 7 of our Constitution, which declared New Hampshire to be forever a free, sovereign, and independent state, then, Mr. Speaker, would I press the red button to stop the abuse of distant, illegitimate powers? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Bravo. An amazing speech in the last minutes prior to the actual vote taking place. He was so well spoken. Kudos to Mike Sylvia for this.
It's interesting. I think these speeches were great. I think they turned out better. Better. I didn't even know there were going to be speeches, to be honest. I mean, I guess I kind of figured there would be, but like.
There wouldn't have been if the motion to table had succeeded.
Right, exactly.
There would have been no discussion.
Exactly. I think there's things that could be done a little bit better next time around. I think maybe focusing more on what it's going to mean for the people if we become independent, and less on defending the constitutional amendment next time around. But other than that, I think this was amazing, these speeches.
603-283-6160. You can go to nhexit.us. You can find the video there. I think it'll be up a little bit later, but right now it's on the Free Keene Odyssey.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
When commercials come on, don't push the button. Instead, listen. Even if you don't sell things for a living, you're still selling in the various conversations and transactions that make up your busy day. With money and attention so scarce now, effective communication skills have never been more important, especially if you're a job seeker. So take a lesson from Madison Avenue. Often the fewer words, the more effective the message. Like Jiffy Lube, where you never need an appointment, or the Office Max ad that says, you supply the ambition, we supply everything else. How about online ticket broker StubHub.com, the way in when it's sold out, or CyberCupidMatch.com's seductive, go ahead, it's okay to look. How cleverly and succinctly can you distill your message? For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. You can go onto our website, enjoy various different features, including archives that go back for years over at freetalklive.com. We've got our Odyssey channel where we're streaming live every night over at video.freetalklive.com. Please give us a follow on Odyssey, which Odyssey just keeps getting better and better. Apparently now RT has been banned from YouTube, maybe entirely. I don't know if you guys heard about that.
And I can't get through to the Russia Today website either.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I tried hitting that, and I hit a Cloudflare DDoS wall, so I don't know if Russia engaged
They've engaged a DDoS
Cloudflare,
checker. Yeah.
In which case, it's not working right because
I
it was
just got
keeping
through
me
right
out.
now.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the thing
I got
is,
through to the front page from a search engine when I
Were you on a
tried
VPN?
that, but every time I clicked on an article to read it, I got thrown out.
Were you on a VPN?
I was not.
I mean, Russia today is being DDoS. It's an attack. So they put themselves behind Cloudflare, and Cloudflare, sometimes things with Cloudflare don't work perfectly, but they prevent, the idea is that it's going to prevent the site from becoming unaccessible when such attacks are being performed. So,
well, and apparently not only, according to RT.com, not only is YouTube going to, or it has banned RT, it's also going to demonetize Russian users. So once again, punishing not just the government, but the people, the innocent people of Russia who do not necessarily support what their government's actions are, continues from these various different U.S. corporations.
Some of the interesting parts about that are, I wonder how much of that is YouTube and how much of that is the banks. Because the banks, if you can't do a payment to a Russian bank, how does YouTube actually pay those people in Russia?
What
right?
I would do if I was doing business in Russia and crypto was not available for some reason is I would keep that, whatever their balance was, I would keep a record of it. And if and when I was able to get the transfer to them, I would make that transfer.
Let's talk more about these centralized banking quote-unquote solutions that are terrible. You've got news about one of them.
Yeah, so this is from the New York Times, and the title of the story is "Fraud is Flourishing on Zelle. The banks say it's not their problem."
Oh, that's their system.
Which is really interesting given, they are attacking crypto users.
Right.
The government is attacking crypto users and saying, oh, you sold some crypto to somebody else and they were defrauded, therefore it's your problem. Well, hold on. The licensed banks, right? It's not their problem, they're saying.
Well, surely they're going to be arrested in moments with the FBI busting in their front door with a Bearcat.
Their licenses are going to be revoked.
No, that's not going to happen.
Well, in theory, right? I mean,
I think you've forgotten who works for who. It's the government working for the bankers, not the other way around.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And this is the double standard that I'm trying to point out for you guys here. Zelle,
you've done it well.
The payments platform used by millions of customers, is a popular target for scammers. But banks have been reluctant to make fraud victims whole, despite owning the system. Justin France lost $500 to a scammer impersonating a Wells Fargo official in January and hoped that the bank would reimburse him. Mr. France was a long-time...
He doesn't know much about banks.
No, right? Was a long-time Wells Fargo customer and had immediately reported the scam involving Zelle, the popular money transfer app. So the problem here is that, it's up to you. If you hand a scammer money, dollars, right? Who's responsible for that? You are, right? But if you use a technology, all of a sudden somebody else becomes responsible for that?
Well, okay. On one hand, I agree with the fact that these people, they made a mistake, and usually you got to pay a price when you make a mistake. I get that. But not knowing anything about the details of this circumstance, I know one thing's for sure about the system that's behind Zelle. It's the ACH transfer system, and you can reverse an ACH payment. The banks can reverse those payments usually easily within 60 days. So if this guy did report the fraud immediately, as he said that he did, that account or that money should have still been in the fraudster's account.
Yep.
And the bank should have been able to lock that account up and pull that money back in unless...
Which just goes to show, unlike somebody who sells crypto who doesn't have control once it leaves their wallet, the banks actually do. And the banks are not,
and they're not
protecting people.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very interesting double standard here.
I mean, it is possible that the transfer went through before the banks, started the gears turning to do anything about it, and then the fraudster withdrew the cash from the account, and then there was nothing there to to grab a hold of. That's a possibility, I suppose.
And this is the thing. This is one of the problems with protecting, giving or mandating in law that people need to be protected by like the financial institutions. It actually, those costs, that has a huge cost associated with it, and those costs get passed on to consumers. So, and I know about this from a business perspective, because I have a company, Think Penguin Incorporated, and we sell computers. But I know about it from that perspective, but I also understand it from a banking perspective of as you point out, Ian, if a bank, for example, has money wired in from wherever, and that person whose account it's wired into is being defrauded, and then that same person wires money out of that account to some overseas account, well, who pays for that? The bank pays for that, and that means they have to cover those costs, which means they have to get that money from somewhere. And where do they get that money from? It comes from all the other customers. Now, on the other hand, if people were responsible for the fraud that they're I don't want to say they're allowing, but they're maybe being naive, if they had to cover some of that cost, people would be a lot more hesitant to send money to people they don't know.
Well, people have to cover all of that cost now, and they're not more hesitant than they are now.
Well, it's everybody who uses a financial institution is covering that cost, as opposed to the people who are...
No, most of the time
they're covering the costs themselves.
Most of the time, the banks are not just paying you for the mistakes that you make.
No. What I'm saying is they're passing it on through fees, right? To their
but they're not.
No, they're not. They don't refund fraud. The only time that they do is Visa and MasterCard. You can reverse a payment through Visa and MasterCard.
Well, that actually
they eat that cost.
No. That's not true. It's the businesses that eat that cost, not the banks.
Well, if they can't recover it from the business, though, then Visa eats that cost.
Yeah, it never works that way. It's always the business that ends up eating that cost. So they pass it on in terms of higher prices on goods. So. Anyway, the whole point that I'm trying to make here is, regardless of if I've actually said that correctly, but you're right. These banks definitely generally will not be held to account.
The only way the bank will hold themselves to account for fraud that has happened under their purview is if the bank was somehow negligent and their agents were like involved or something like that. There are rare occasions where the bank will take responsibility for something.
Even then, there was a case where somebody made a cash deposit in somebody else's account and then went back and withdrew that money, and the bank was definitely negligent in allowing that to happen.
And they did nothing.
But they did not refund that money.
Yep, sure. The banks do potentially have sometimes situations where they can end up with bearing those costs, whether or not they accept those costs or not. Like, for example, if somebody just there's a negative balance as a result of fraud, and the person who was defrauded effectively walks away from that account, never reimbursing the bank, that person might end up on a list, which makes it difficult for them to, get another bank account somewhere else. But nonetheless, that bank still ends up bearing those costs. Now, the problem with the government mandating that the bank or a financial institution bear those costs is that it will end up ultimately coming to the rest of the customer, and it doesn't discourage people from making unwise decisions when it comes to paying somebody they don't know or putting themselves at effectively really the rest of the customer base of the bank at risk for that fraud that they sort of allowed to occur because they were not careful. And the only person who can be careful is you, the consumer.
Beware.
The bank is not going to be able to stop a fraud in most instances from occurring.
No, they'll ask you one question. Oh, you're not being scammed, are you? You know this person, right? If somebody's going in to send a payment to somebody they don't know, and if they are sending a payment to their African lover who they've never met, but yet they believe they're going to be married to or something like that, then they're going to lie to the banker. They'll straight up lie to their face and say, "Oh yeah, I know him."
Yeah. So Wells Fargo said the transaction wasn't fraudulent because Mr. France had authorized it. So. And this is interesting. What
they're saying is it was Mr. So-and-so who did it. It wasn't someone else who did it. So therefore, it wasn't fraud from the bank's perspective.
Yeah.
It's an interesting story. Out of time for tonight, and I guess the most important point is those bankers are not going to be criminally charged in any way, shape, or form for the millions of dollars, probably billions of dollars in fraud.
Nope. But if you sell crypto, you very well might be.
Right. Check out thecrypto6.com for more about that. More tomorrow night. In the meantime, freetalklive.com. Join us there. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
This is the Liberty Radio Network, broadcasting the latest liberty-oriented audio content 24 hours a day at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. President Biden says any use of chemical or biological weapons in Ukraine by Russian forces will be met with a response from the US and NATO. He was speaking after the Russians again spread a debunked conspiracy theory that the US has developed chemical weapons in partnership with the Ukrainian government. The Russian ambassador to the United Nations was condemned by the US and its allies for voicing that claim today at UN headquarters. At the White House, President Biden.
I'm not going to speak about the intelligence, but Russia would pay a severe price if they use chemical weapons.
The president also announced today that he's terminating Russia's access to preferential trading arrangements with the United States that were first granted back in 1996. There are concerns in Ukraine about the possibility of an attack on the capital Kyiv after a stalled Russian military convoy could be seen regrouping and redeploying in the latest satellite images. Reporter Oz Kataji in Kyiv says the military, assisted by volunteers, has now barricaded the city.
They've had plenty of time to reinforce now, so you've got concrete barricades, metal, anti-tank hedgehogs, really seriously enforced all over this city. And driving from point A to point B, it takes a really long time to do like a normal, what would be a 15-minute journey along main roads. You can't do in that time because you're stopped every couple hundred, 250, 300 meters by another one of these checkpoints, which